Welcome to Potter Eclipse. Today's adventure. A Goblin Audit at age 8 revealed Dumbledore had drained 67,000 galleons from Harry's vault. If you haven't already, smash that subscribe button and ring the bell so you never miss a story. Now let's begin. Chapter 1. The Audit. Harry Potter had learned to count the seconds between Dudley's shout and Dudley's fist, and the number was 4. It had been 5 once back when his cousin was slower and softer. Practice had shaved a second off. Harry kept the figure the way other boys kept marbles because it was his, and because 4 seconds was exactly enough to clear the low wall behind the Palkus's hedge if he ran the moment the shout left Dudley's mouth and did not waste any of it being afraid. Get him, one. Harry ran. The afternoon was the color of dishwater, the sky over Little winging flat and close, and the air smelled of cut grass and the petrol the neighbors used on their mowers. He registered all of it without slowing. 2. Wall came up under his hands. 3. He was over, knees folding, soles slapping the alley on the far side, and Dudley's gang spilled against the hedge behind him in a tangle of trainers and swearing, because Piers Palkus was fat in the legs and Dennis was a coward, and Dudley, who was neither, had stopped to be angry instead of to chase. 4. Harry was already gone. He took the alley behind Magnolia Crescent at a flat sprint, and he did not feel triumphant, because triumph was a thing that cost you. If he were caught smiling about getting away, the getting away would be paid for tonight, in the dark, in the cupboard, in his uncle's particular silence that was worse than shouting. So he ran with a blank face and a fast heart, and he turned the calculations over instead. He had perhaps a mile of streets he knew. After that, the map in his head went gray. He had never been allowed past the playground at the end of Wisteria Walk, never been on a train, never stood anywhere that was his to stand in. He owned 4 things in the world: a pair of trousers turned up 4 times at the hem, a jumper the color of a bruise, a pair of glasses mended with tape, and the cupboard under the stairs, which was not his so much as he was its. He could hear them again. Dudley had got over his anger and back into his legs. The gang was strung out along Magnolia Crescent now, and the alley behind Harry forked, and one fork went towards the high street where there were people and the other went towards the waste ground behind the garages where there were not, and Dudley knew which one Harry would pick, because Harry always picked the empty one, because people meant being seen and being seen meant being told on. That was the trouble with patterns. Other people could count them too. A hand closed on the back of his jumper. It was Piers who had cut the corner, and the world jerked to a stop and Harry's collar bit into his throat. Dudley arrived a moment later, breathing through his mouth, his face shining and pleased, and the 3 of them backed Harry into the angle where 2 garage walls met, and there was nowhere left to run and no second left to run in. Thought you were fast, Dudley said. Harry said nothing. Saying things made it longer. My dad says you're going to a school for criminal boys, Dudley said, and he said it as he said most things, as a fact he had been handed and never weighed. St. Brutus's, where they cane you, he smiled. I'm going to smell things. Piers laughed because Dudley had. Dennis laughed because Piers had. The arithmetic of it was old, and Harry had stopped resenting it years ago. Resentment, like triumph, cost you, and he was a boy with nothing to spend. He looked at the gap between Piers and the wall, which was not wide enough, and at Dudley's fist, which was, and he understood with the flat certainty of long experience that this was going to hurt, and that there was no number of seconds anywhere in the afternoon that would prevent it. Dudley drew his arm back, and something in Harry, some cold, quiet thing that lived below the counting and the watching, said, no, not a plea, not a wish. He had wished before, lying in the dark with his ribs aching, and wishing had never once moved the world an inch. This was not wishing. This was a refusal, complete and total, the way a door refuses a key that does not fit it. No, not here, not this, somewhere that is mine, and the alley behind the garages folded shut like an eye. There was a sound he felt rather than heard, a deep soft thud that happened inside his own bones, and the pull of it took him by the middle and dragged him sideways through a space that had no width. The garage walls were gone, Dudley was gone, the dishwater sky was gone. Harry came down hard onto a floor of cold marble on his hands and his knees and did not fall further and held very still. He had learned that too. When you did not know where you were, you did not move until you did. The first thing he noticed was the quiet, not the absence of sound. There was sound, the dry rustle of paper, the click of something small and metal, a low voice somewhere speaking a language made of edges, but a quiet underneath all of it, a deep held hush like the inside of a bell that has just stopped ringing. The second thing was the light. It came down from somewhere far above in long pale columns, and where it touched the floor the marble shone the color of old cream, and where it did not the shadows were the color of nothing at all. He raised his head. He was in a hall so large that the far end of it was a guess. White pillars climbed up into a gloom that swallowed their tops. Down the length of the hall ran 2 rows of high counters, dark wood polished to black, and behind each counter, on a stool that lifted it to the height of a tall man, sat a creature. They were small and they were not children. Their skin had the gray-brown of river stone. Their faces came to points: the nose, the chin, the long delicate ears, and their hands, where they moved over the ledgers and the scales and the little brass weights, had too many knuckles and ended in nails like dark horn. They wore clothes the color of dried blood and dull gold, and they did not look up, most of them, because most of them were working, and the ones who were not working were watching a boy who had appeared out of the air onto their floor, and their watching had no softness in it at all. Harry got to his feet. His knees hurt where the marble had taken them. He did not rub them. He understood distantly that he should be terrified, and he noted the absence of the terror with the same flat attention he gave to everything. He had used up his fear in the alley. What was left was the cold, quiet thing, looking out through his eyes, taking the measure of the room. A creature was coming towards him. It came down the central aisle without hurry, and it was older than the ones at the counters. The gray of its skin had gone the color of ash at the temples, and it carried itself like a man who had never once in his life been the one to apologize. It stopped a careful distance from Harry and looked up at him, which it had to do, because even standing Harry was the taller, and Harry understood that the looking up cost the creature nothing and was not meant to. "You are not," the creature said in English now, in a voice like two dry stones turned against each other, "a customer." "No," Harry said, "you are a child, you are unaccompanied, and you have arrived by translocation onto the floor of Gringotts, which is not a thing children do." The black eyes moved over him, the taped glasses, the turned-up trousers, the bruise-colored jumper, and did not change. "You will tell me how." "I don't know how," Harry said. It was the truth, and he gave it plainly, because lying to something that watched you like this would be a waste, and Harry did not waste things. "My cousin was going to hit me. I didn't want to be there, then I was here." Something happened in the creature's face, not surprise, but a sharpening, the focusing of an instrument. "Accidental translocation under duress," it said, half to itself. "From the Muggle world to here." It tilted its head. "Do you know what here is, boy?" "A bank," Harry said. "And how do you know that?" Harry looked again at the counters, the scales, the weights, the long ledgers, the iron-bound boxes. A younger creature was wheeling on a trolley towards a doorway at the side. "The counters are too high for the customers and the right height for the clerks," he said. "There are scales for weighing and weights to weigh against and nothing for sale. You weigh money, and you don't trust the customers to be taller than you, which means you keep something they want and they don't keep anything you want." He stopped because he had said more than he meant to, and saying more than you meant to was a way of being known, and being known was dangerous. But the cold, quiet thing had wanted to say it, and he had let it. The creature was silent for a moment. Then it made a sound that was not quite a laugh, a single dry click at the back of its throat. "Bograd," it said not loudly, and one of the clerks slid down from his stool at the nearest counter and came over, younger, the gray of his skin still dark, his clothes a notch plainer. "Bograd, the ledger in the bowl, we have a child who reasons, and a child who reasons may be reasoned with, and a child who arrives by air may be anyone." The black eyes came back to Harry. "I am Gornuk. I am a master auditor of this branch. Do you know what an auditor is, boy?" "Someone who checks that the numbers are true," Harry said. "Someone who checks that the numbers are true," Gornuk agreed, "and who is not loved for it. Give me your name." "There was no reason not to, Harry." "Harry," said Gornuk, and waited, and when nothing more came, the sharpening in his face went a degree keener. "Only Harry, Harry Potter." The clerk Bograd, who had been setting a shallow stone bowl and a heavy book on the counter beside them, went still. The stillness traveled. It was not loud and it was not sudden, but Harry, who had spent his whole life reading the temperature of a room because the temperature of a room was the difference between dinner and the cupboard, felt it move outward through the hall like the cold off an open door. The nearest clerks had stopped writing. Down the aisle a head turned, and then another. Gornuk did not turn. Gornuk looked at Harry with a new and total attention, and when he spoke his voice had lost the dryness and gained an edge that had been waiting underneath it the whole time. "Potter," he said, "and you came here by your blood's own asking, with no key, no guardian, and no leave." It was not a question. He reached up the too many-knuckled hand, the horn-dark nails, and he did not touch Harry, but he held the hand flat in the air a foot from Harry's chest, and Harry felt something pass through him like the draft from a deep place, a cold that did not come off the marble. Gornuk's eyes half closed. "There is old work on this one," he murmured, bound to him and bound away from him both. "Someone has spent a great deal of magic teaching this child's name to forget itself." The hand lowered. "Bograd." The bowl. Bograd set the stone bowl in front of Harry. From a fold of his coat he produced a thin black needle, the length of a finger, and laid it beside the bowl with a care that Harry noticed. "This will hurt for an instant and not after," Gornuk said. "You will prick your thumb and let 3 drops fall into the bowl, and the bank will read what your blood has to say, because blood does not lie and does not forget and cannot be taught to. If you are Harry Potter, the ledger will know it. If you are not, the ledger will know that too, and you will have wasted my afternoon, and I will be unkind about it. Do you understand?" "Yes," Harry said. He picked up the needle. He looked at it and then at Gornuk, and the cold, quiet thing made him ask the question that mattered before he gave anything away. "What happens to me after the ledger knows?" Gornuk's mouth moved. It might have been approval. "That," he said, "depends entirely on what the ledger knows." Harry pricked his thumb. It hurt for an instant and not after, exactly as promised, and he held his hand over the bowl and let 3 drops fall, dark against the pale stone, and the drops did not pool and did not run. They sank. They sank into the solid rock as though it were water, and where they vanished a light came up out of the stone, gold and very old, and the heavy book on the counter fell open of its own accord and its pages began to turn. They turned fast, riffling hundreds of them, and then they slowed, and then they stopped, and across the open page words wrote themselves in a hand like burning wire. Bograd leaned over the book. His pointed face, lit from below by the gold, went through 3 expressions in as many seconds, and the last of them was something close to alarm. "Master Gornuk," he said quietly. "I see it," said Gornuk. Harry could not read the burning wire hand, which was in no alphabet he knew, but he could read Bograd's face and he could read the line of Gornuk's shoulders, and both of them were telling him the same thing, which was that the ledger had said something it had not expected to say. "What does it say?" Harry asked. Gornuk did not answer at once. He read down the page, and his eyes moved the way Harry's own eyes moved when he was counting, and the count was coming out wrong, back and back again, checking. He straightened. The look he turned on Harry had changed a 3rd time, and Harry could not name what it had changed into, only that it was the first time in his memory that an adult had looked at him as though he were a problem that mattered. "It says," Gornuk said, "that you are Harry James Potter, son of James Charles Potter and Lily Potter née Evans, and heir to the ancient and noble house of Potter." He paused. "It says your house holds a trust vault and a family vault under the protection of this bank. It says the trust vault has been drawn upon, lawfully and by authority, 211 times in the last 7 years. His voice did not rise. It went, if anything, quieter, and the quiet was worse. "And it says that you, the heir, have set foot in this bank for the first time today at the age of 8, knowing none of it." The words arranged themselves in Harry's head, and he turned them over slowly, because they did not fit the world he had been living in, and he wanted to be sure of the shape of them before he let them in. "I have money," he said. "You have a great deal of money," said Gornuk, "and someone has been spending it." "Someone," said Gornuk, "has been spending it." Harry looked at the open book, at the burning wire hand, at the 211 times a hand that was not his had reached into something that was. He thought of the cupboard. He thought of the trousers turned up 4 times at the hem, and the glasses mended with tape, and the dinners that were not always dinners. He thought of his aunt saying, "We don't ask for thanks, taking you in, the expense of you," and of his uncle saying, "You cost us a fortune," and he had believed it, because what reason had he ever had not to, and the cold quiet thing in him went very still and very attentive, the way it went before it understood a pattern all the way to the end. "Who?" Harry said. "That," said Gornuk, "is the correct question, and I do not yet have the whole of the answer, and that I do not have the whole of the answer is itself a thing I do not like." He closed the book, and the gold light died, and the hall around them was ordinary marble again, but the hush in it had not gone back to what it was. "Walk with me, Harry Potter. We are going to look at some numbers." The auditor's office lay behind a door at the side of the hall and down a flight of steps cut straight into rock. The walls there were not marble but raw stone, dry and cold, and the air smelled of metal and old paper. A single room waited at the bottom, lit by lamps that burned without smoke, and it was almost entirely filled by a table, and the table was almost entirely filled by ledgers, great black books standing in ranks, their spines stamped with the burning wire script, more of them than Harry could count at a glance, which was unusual, because Harry could usually count anything at a glance. Gornuk took the chair at the head of the table. Bograd, who had followed with the stone bowl and the book under his arm, set a stool for Harry without being told, which Harry noticed, because no adult had ever set anything for him without being told. "Sit," Gornuk said, "and listen, because I am going to tell you what is about to happen and why, and then it is going to happen, and I dislike explaining myself twice." He laid his many-knuckled hands flat on the table. "When an heir of a protected house sets foot in this bank without their registered guardian, the bank does a thing called reconciliation. It is not a punishment and it is not a favor, it is bookkeeping. The bank stops every hand that has leave to touch your vaults, including yours, for the moment, and it lays the account open and it counts. Every coin in, every coin out, every authority claimed against your gold, and the paper that backs each claim. It is done so that no heir can be told when he comes of age that the bank let his fortune leak away in the dark and called it none of its business. Gringotts is many things, Harry Potter. It is not careless with what it is paid to keep." "You said it stops my hand too," Harry said. "For the moment. Why mine? It's mine." "Because you are 8, Gornuk said, "and an 8-year-old who can be reasoned into anything can be reasoned into ruin, and the bank protects the vault from the heir as readily as from the thief, where the heir is a child. When you are of age it will be different. Today it is this." He turned his head. "Bograd, open the trust." Bograd set the heavy book in the center of the table and opened it, and again the gold came up out of the page, but this time it did not write a name. It wrote columns. They scrolled upward out of the paper and hung in the lamplight, rows of figures in the burning hand, and Bograd murmured a word, and the figures rearranged themselves into letters Harry could read. Translated, he understood for his benefit, and he understood too that this was a courtesy, and that courtesies from creatures like these were not free and would be remembered on both sides. "The Potter Trust Vault," Gornuk said. "Opened for the heir's maintenance and education, as is the custom at the heir's birth." Funded at that time from the family vault in the sum of 100,000 galleons. Harry looked at the number, 100,000. He had no way to feel the size of it. He had held in his whole life perhaps 4 coins, all of them copper, all of them Dudley's cast-offs. 100,000 of anything was not a quantity to him. It was a word. That is the trust alone, Gornuk went on, watching him, and the trust is the small purse. The family vault is the deep one, and we will come to it, and it is not the family vault that has been bleeding. He raised one nailed finger, and the columns scrolled. The trust is meant to be drawn upon. That is its purpose. A guardian draws a reasonable sum for the heir's keep, his food, his clothes, his schooling, his physician. The bank expects to see those withdrawals and does not question them within reason, because questioning the keep of every warded child would take an army of auditors and earn the bank nothing. The finger stopped. Within reason. Mark those words, Harry Potter. The whole of what I am about to find lives or dies in those 2 words. He read. Harry watched him read. It was not quick. Gornuk went down the columns the way a man walks a fence he is paid to keep, and twice he stopped and went back, and once he made the dry click at the back of his throat that Harry was beginning to learn was the sound of him finding something he did not like. 211 withdrawals, Gornuk said at last, not looking up. Across 7 years. That is roughly 1 every 12 days, which is more often than a child's keep requires, but not by itself a crime. Some guardians are merely tidy and pay as they go. The finger moved. Here is the first thing. The withdrawals are not all of a kind. There's a regular sum paid monthly of a size that might be a child's maintenance, 75 galleons. There's a second regular sum, smaller, 18 galleons, paid to second name, and there is a third sort. He stopped. The lamplight lay still on the cold stone. The third sort is irregular. It comes in large amounts at uneven times against a single standing authority, and it is paid to no name at all. No name, Harry said. No name, Gornuk said. A disbursement to a sealed instruction. The gold leaves your trust and goes to an instruction the bank is not permitted to read, signed by the holder of the authority, and the authority. He turned a page that hung in the air, and the gold script slid. The authority is a single document lodged with this bank 7 years ago that grants its holder leave to draw upon the Potter trust at his own discretion for the heir's benefit as he alone shall judge. It is filed under the reference Ad 1. He looked up. And it is signed Albus Percival Wulfric Brian Dumbledore, magical guardian of Harry James Potter. The name meant nothing to Harry. He turned it over and found no edge on it anywhere, no door it opened, no memory it touched. It was a long name and an old-fashioned one, and it belonged to a stranger. I don't know that name, Harry said. Something moved through Bograd's face again, that flicker of something close to distress, and even Gornuk was quiet for a beat longer than his habit. No, Gornuk said, I rather think you would not. That is its own piece of the puzzle and not the smallest. He set both hands flat again. Albus Dumbledore is at present the chief warlock of the Wisengamot, which is the High Court and High Council of Magical Britain. He is the supreme mugwump of the International Confederation of Wizards. He is the headmaster of the school you would one day have attended without knowing you could pay for it 10 times over. He is held by a very great many people to be the greatest wizard alive and the best man in the country, and he has held all of these titles for most of your life, and he is the man whose name is on the authority that has been emptying your trust into a sealed dark for 7 years. Gornuk's voice did not change at all, and that was what made Harry's skin prickle. He is also, the ledger tells me, the man who registered himself as your guardian 11 days after your parents died, and who placed you where you have been living, and who has paid the people you live with 75 galleons a month for your keep. Harry sat with that, 75 galleons a month. He did not know what a galleon would buy. But he knew what his keep had cost because he had been his keep. He had lived inside the budget of it every day of his remembered life, and the budget had been a cupboard and turned-up trousers and taped glasses and dinners that were not always dinners, and his aunt's voice saying the expense of you and the cold quiet thing in him, which did not do rage because rage was a thing he had never been able to afford, did a thing now that it had never done before. It went colder. He did not shout. He did not cry. He looked at the floating gold figure that said 75 and the floating gold figure that said the Dursleys had been paid it 85 times, and he asked, in a voice that came out level and quiet and not at all like an 8-year-old's, how much, all of it, how much has been taken that wasn't for me? Gornuk regarded him for a long moment. Whatever he saw, he seemed to decide it could bear the number. I will not give you a true figure today, he said. A true figure is the work of weeks, and I do not hand a child a guess and call it a finding. That is how auditors become liars. But you have asked, and you have the right, so I will give you the provisional sum, the difference, as it stands at this hour, between what has left your trust and what any honest reckoning could call the keep of one small boy. He turned to the book. He spoke a word, and the columns collapsed, summing themselves, the figures running together and resolving, and a single number stood alone in the air above the table, gold and burning and very large. 67,000 galleons, Gornuk said. Give or take, and the give or take is small. 67,000 galleons drawn from the trust of Harry James Potter over 7 years that cannot be accounted for as the keep of Harry James Potter, because Harry James Potter, by the look of him, has not had 75 galleons spent on him in his life. The number hung there. Harry looked at it. He found to his own faint surprise that he was not thinking about the cupboard anymore, or the trousers, or his aunt's voice. Those were facts, and he had already accepted them. He was thinking about the shape of the thing, about a man with a great many titles and a name too long for one person, who had decided, 11 days after a small boy's parents died, that the small boy's gold was his to spend in the dark and the small boy's life was a cupboard under some stairs, and who had been right for 7 years because there had been no one to count. "There's someone to count now," Harry said. It was not a question, and he did not say it loudly, but Bograd heard it, and Bograd looked at the boy in the bruise-colored jumper with the taped glasses, and then at Gornuk, and the look that passed between the two goblins was one Harry would not understand the full weight of for some time, but he understood enough of it to know that something had been decided in the room that he had not been the one to decide. Gornuk closed the book. The number went out like a snuffed wick. A provisional finding of 67,000 galleons in unaccounted outflow against a miner's protected trust, he said, and now he was not speaking to Harry. He was speaking to the room, to the rank black ledgers, to the bank itself, in the flat formal cadence of a man laying the first stone of something large. Authority claimed under instrument Ad 1. Authority's reference traced to a sealed Weisengamot file. The bank cannot read the file. The bank does not like files it cannot read lodged against gold it is paid to keep. He stood. He was small and old, and his head did not reach Harry's shoulder, and Harry had never in his life seen anything that frightened him less or that he would rather have on his side. This is no longer a reconciliation, Bograd. Note the hour. As of now it is an audit, full and formal, of the Potter accounts and every authority claimed against them. Summon Skerok. He managed these vaults before Adwin took the work out of his hands, and he will have opinions, and his opinions will be exact. And send word above. The director will want to know that someone has been robbing a vault. Bograd was already moving. Skerok came before the summons could have reached him, which told Harry something about how fast word traveled in this place when the word was theft. He was older even than Gornuk, his skin gone the pale gray of cold ash, and he walked with a stick of black iron that he did not appear to need, and when he came into the lamplight he looked first at the ledgers, then at Gornuk, and only last and briefly at Harry, and the brevity was not contempt. It was a man refusing to be distracted from his grievance by a child. Ad 1, Skerok said. He did not sit. You have found Ad 1. The boy found it, Gornuk said, by the simple method of existing, which is more than the last 7 years of this branch managed. Do not, said Skerok, and the iron stick came down once against the stone, not hard. Lay that at my feet. I raised the objection. I raised it in writing. I raised it 3 times. He turned finally, the full of his attention, to Harry, and his eyes were the oldest thing in the room. I managed the Potter vaults for 31 years, boy, your grandfather, your father. I knew the weight of that gold to the half-sickle, and 11 days after your father died I was handed a paper with the chief warlock's seal upon it, and told that the management of the trust would henceforth proceed by the holder's discretion, that my services upon it were no longer required, that the bank had accepted the instrument, and that I would mind my counters. The stick struck the floor again. Wizard came into the bank and took the work of an account from the hand of the accounts keeper, with a paper and a seal and the right name signed beneath, and the bank let him, because the name and the seal were large enough that no one wished to be the goblin who said no to them. That is the crime that was committed 7 years ago. The 67,000 is only what the crime did with its time. The room was very still. You said you objected in writing, Harry said. Then there's a record, 3 records. With dates, Skerok looked at him. For the first time the old goblin's face changed, a narrowing, a reappraisal, the same instrument focus Harry had seen in Gornuk up in the hall. There is, Skerok said slowly, 3 filings, dated, sealed, and lodged where they cannot be unlodged, because I am not a fool, and I knew the day I was overruled that one day someone would come asking, and I meant to be ready when they did. He tilted his head. I did not expect them to be 8. It doesn't matter how old I am, Harry said. It matters whether the dates are true. The dates are true. Then I want them, Harry said, all 3, and the paper they overruled you with, and every withdrawal with its date in order. He was not pleading and he was not commanding. He was simply naming the next several things that needed to exist, the seconds between a shout and a fist counted out in advance. If someone signed his name to take my money, then his name is on the taking. Names and dates, that's all a theft is, names and dates that don't add up. It struck them both silent. Harry had said in plain child's English the exact thing Goblin Law spent 10,000 words in a sacred treaty saying, and no one had taught it to him. Names and dates that do not add up, Gornuk repeated softly. Yes, that is all a theft is, and we are very, very good at addition. He gestured at the ranks of black ledgers. Tomorrow we begin to make them add. Tonight you will eat because you are thin in a way I do not care for, and you will sleep somewhere that locks from the inside, and in the morning Skerok will lay before you the whole shape of what was done, from the first stone to the last, and you will see your enemy entire before you ever lay eyes upon his face. He paused. Does that suit you, Harry Potter? Yes, Harry said. Good, said Gornuk. Then we understand each other, and that is a rarer thing than gold. Harry stayed on his stool in the cold stone room, a long way under London, in a place no one who was looking for him would ever think to look, and for the first time in his 8 years he was somewhere that was, in a sense he was only beginning to measure, entirely his, and he sat very straight, and he waited to be told the rest, and the cold quiet thing behind his eyes had stopped merely watching the world. It had started, very carefully, to keep its own ledger. Chapter 1 and Chapter 2. The theft mapped. Harry woke in a room that locked from the inside, and the first thing he did was check that it still did. The bolt was iron and the door was iron-banded oak and the bed was hard and dry in his, and he lay in it for a moment cataloging the unfamiliar fact of having slept the whole night without listening for footsteps on the stairs. There had been food the evening before, bread, a thick soup the color of rust, a wedge of pale cheese, and he had eaten all of it slowly because eating fast was how you got noticed, and then he had slept, and now it was whatever passed for morning 100 feet under London, and he was still rich and still robbed, and both of those facts had survived the night intact. He dressed in the bruise-colored jumper because it was what he had. Then he sat on the edge of the bed and waited because someone would come, and when they came he wanted to be ready and not surprised. Bograd came. He carried a tray, and on the tray was porridge with honey in it and a mug of something hot and dark, and he set it on the small table without ceremony. Eat, Bograd said. Master Scarrock does not begin until the witness has eaten. He considers a hungry mind a careless one. He's right, Harry said, and ate. Bograd watched him do it, and Harry let himself be watched because there was nothing in the eating worth hiding. When the bowl was empty, the goblin took it back onto the tray and stood a moment longer than the task required. You did not weep last night, Bograd said. It was not quite a question. No, most children would have. You learned of a theft and an enemy and a fortune all in an afternoon. It is a great deal. Weeping doesn't change a number, Harry said. If it changed a number, I'd do it. Something shifted in Bograd's gray face, not a smile. The goblins did not seem to smile, but a settling, as of a creature deciding that a thing it had suspected was true. No, he agreed, it does not change a number. He took the tray to the door. Come, the master has laid out the morning's work, and the master does not like to be kept. The chamber Scarrock had chosen was not the cramped office of the night before. It was long and low and cut from the living rock, and down the center of it ran a single table of black stone, and on the table in ranks lay the ledgers, but they were open now and pinned flat, and between them, hanging in the still air without support, floated the gold script of the bank, arranged not in the chaos of a single account, but in a structure, a thing built, a map. Scarrock stood at the head of it with his iron stick. Gornuk stood at his shoulder. And there was a third goblin Harry had not seen before, younger than Bograd, with a scribe's narrow fingers and a stack of fresh paper, who did not look up. Sit there, Scarrock said, and pointed with the stick to a stool at the table's foot, set so that the whole length of the map ran away from Harry towards the old goblin like a road. And do not speak until I have finished, because what I am about to do has been done badly in this country for 7 years, and I intend to do it once and do it right. When I am finished you may ask anything, and I will answer, because you are the heir and it is your gold and you have the right, but not until I am finished. Are we agreed? Agreed, Harry said, and sat and folded his hands and did not speak. Good. Scarrock set the stick against the table. He laid one nailed hand flat on the black stone, and the floating script brightened and the map resolved. What you are looking at, he said, is the whole of the outflow from the Potter Trust vault, from the 11th day of November in the year your parents died to yesterday afternoon, sorted not by date but by kind. There are 4 kinds. I will take them in the order of their honesty, which is to say from the most defensible to the least, because that is the order in which a guilty man would want them taken, and I am not interested in what a guilty man would want. The script slid. A single column lifted clear of the rest and hung alone, glowing. The first kind, Scarrock said, maintenance. A regular monthly draw of 75 galleons, paid out against the instrument to the household at number 4, Privet Drive, Little Winging, Surrey, which is to say, to your aunt and uncle, for your keep. It began in the December after you were placed there, and it has been paid on the 1st of every month since, without a single missed payment for 85 months. The numbers totaled themselves in the air. 6,375 galleons, to the people who raised you. Harry looked at the figure and said nothing, because he had agreed not to, and because there was nothing to say that the figure did not already say. 6,375 galleons, paid faithfully on time every month for his keep. He thought of the cupboard and kept his face still. This, Scarrock went on, is the most defensible of the 4, and I want you to understand why, because understanding why is the whole of the work. It is defensible because maintenance is what the instrument is for. A guardian may pay for the keep of his ward. 75 galleons a month is, by the standards of a noble house, not even generous, it is modest. On paper this column is innocent. A court would glance at it and pass on. The old goblin's eyes came up the length of the table to Harry. On paper. The difference between the paper and the truth is sitting on a stool in front of me, wearing a jumper the color of a bruise, and that difference is not a thing the ledger can hold. Remember that. The cleanest column is sometimes the cruelest. We will come back to it. The column dimmed, a second lifted. The second kind, a smaller regular draw, 18 galleons a month to a second household in the same village, paid to one Arabella Doring Fig. Skerrock paused. You know this name. It was not a question, but Harry answered it anyway, because the name had landed somewhere and he wanted to know where. Mrs. Fig, he said. She lives 2 streets over. She has cats. My aunt left me with her sometimes when they went out, when there was somewhere they didn't want to take me. 18 galleons a month, Skerrock said, for 85 months. 1,530 galleons, paid to the woman with the cats who kept you while your family enjoyed themselves elsewhere. He let it sit. The instrument records the purpose of this draw as observation, not childcare, observation. Mrs. Fig was paid out of your gold to watch you, to keep an eye, to report. I do not yet know to whom she reported, though I can guess, and I do not guess in this room, but mark the shape of it, air. You were not merely placed and forgotten. You were placed and watched, and the watcher was paid with your own money, and the watching was important enough to someone that it never once lapsed in 7 years. Harry sat very still. 2 streets over, the smell of cabbage and cat, the long dull afternoons looking at photographs of tabbies named Tufty and Snowy while Mrs. Fig dozed, and she had been paid to watch with his money. He did not move and he did not speak, and the cold, quiet thing behind his eyes made a precise note and went colder, and he kept the agreement and was silent. The third kind, Skerrock said, and now the script slid more heavily, a whole block of it rising, is where the floor begins to give way. A new arrangement hung in the air, not a single column but a scatter, 14 entries of uneven size at uneven dates, and a line ran from each of them down into a single point, a knot of gold, and from the knot nothing emerged at all. 14 disbursements, Skerrock said, irregular in amount and irregular in date across the 7 years. The smallest is 900 galleons, the largest is 8,000. Together they come to 51,800 galleons, and they are paid against the instrument ad 1, at the sole discretion of the holder, to a sealed instruction. The knot of gold pulsed, that is the seal. The gold leaves your trust, it passes into an instruction the bank is forbidden by the terms of the instrument to read, and from there it goes somewhere. The ledger records that it went, the ledger does not record where. 51,800 galleons of a child's inheritance, gone into a dark the bank agreed not to look into, 14 times over 7 years, signed for each time by the same hand. The chamber was silent except for the scratch of the young scribe's quill. This is the heart of it, Skerrock said. Everything else is fringe. 51,800 galleons is the theft. The rest is the decoration around the theft. And it is built air with care to be undiscoverable, because a sealed disbursement against a discretionary instrument is the one shape of withdrawal that the bank's own rules forbid it to question. He did not steal around the rules. He found the one rule that let him steal in plain sight, and he used it 14 times. The old goblin's voice did not rise, and the not rising was a kind of violence. I have managed vaults for 200 years. I have seen men rob the dead and rob the mad and rob the very young. I have never seen it done so cleanly. Whoever built this knew exactly which timber to pull so that the house would fall only inward where no one could see. He let the 14 entries hang a moment longer, then he dismissed them, and the last column rose. The fourth kind is the smallest in galleons and the largest in meaning, and I have saved it for last because it is the one that proves the rest was not an accident. The script resolved into a short list, not withdrawals from the trust at all, Harry saw, but something else, a flow that ran the other way and was diverted before it arrived. Your house does not only hold gold, it holds property, rents. A house like Potter has tenants, farms in the West Country, 2 shops in Hogsmeade, a holding in the cloth trade. By right, the income from these flows into the family vault, the deep purse, against your majority. For 7 years it has not. For 7 years it has been intercepted, redirected, before it reached the vault, into the same sealed instruction as the third kind. 7,295 galleons of income that should have grown your estate, taken at the door before it could be counted as yours. And that, Skerrock said, setting his hand flat again so that the whole map blazed up at once, the clean column and the watcher's column and the knot of dark and the diverted stream, all of it together, the full architecture of 7 years, is the sum of it. 6,375 for your keep, 1,530 for the watcher, 51,800 into the dark, 7,295 diverted before it reached you. The figures ran together and resolved into one. 67,000 galleons to the coin, not a provisional guess as you were given yesterday, a reconciled finding. 67,000 galleons taken from Harry James Potter in 4 streams by one instrument in 7 years. The number hung over the black table, gold and entire. I am finished, Skerrock said. Now you may speak. Harry did not speak at once. He looked at the map, really looked at it, the whole structure of it, the way it fit together, and he understood, looking at it, that he was being shown not just a crime but a mind. Someone had thought about this. Someone had sat down 7 years ago, 11 days after his parents died, and worked out exactly how to take a child's fortune so that the taking could not be seen, and had then done it patiently on schedule for 7 years while the child wore turned-up trousers and slept in a cupboard 2 streets from a paid watcher. When he spoke, his voice came out level. "The first column," Harry said. "The keep. You said it was the cleanest and the cruelest. Why cruelest?" Skerrock's eyes narrowed in what might have been approval. "Tell me why," he said. "You have seen it. Tell me, and I will tell you whether you are right," Harry thought. "Because it's true and it's a lie at the same time," he said slowly. 75 galleons a month went to the Dursleys for my keep. That part is true. The ledger can prove it, but none of it was spent on me. So the column proves he paid for my keep, and the same column hides that there was no keep. If anyone ever asks, if anyone ever counts, he can point at that column and say, "Look, I provided for the boy. Here is the gold every month for 7 years. And it's all there. It's the alibi. He paid my jailers a wage and wrote it down where everyone could see it so that the writing down would protect him." Harry looked up. "It's the cruelest because it's the part that's meant to look like kindness." For a moment no one in the chamber said anything. The young scribe had stopped writing. "Yes," Skerrock said quietly, "that is exactly why. It took me an hour of sitting with it last night to put it as plainly as you have just put it cold. The maintenance column is not a payment. It is a defense prepared in advance against the day a court might ask whether the ward was provided for. He built his own acquittal into the crime and paid for it out of the victim's pocket." The old goblin inclined his head, a fraction, the first such motion Harry had seen from him. "Have the shape of his mind, heir. That will matter more than the gold before we are done." "The sealed instruction," Harry said. "The dark, 51,800. You said the bank agreed not to read it. Agreed with whom?" "With the holder of the instrument. When Ad 1 was lodged, it carried a discretion clause that disbursements made under it to a named sealed instruction would not be examined by the bank, the instruction being a private matter between guardian and ward." Skerrock's mouth thinned. "A standard clause in itself. Guardians of great houses do sometimes have legitimate private business, old debts, discreet charities, matters of honor that do not belong in an open ledger. The clause exists for honest men. He took an honest man's tool and used it as a thief's hood." "I want to see it," Harry said. "Ad 1, the actual paper, not the gold copy in the air, the thing he signed." Skerrock and Gornuk looked at each other, and then Gornuk went to a recess in the wall and worked a lock that took 3 separate motions of his many-knuckled hand, and drew out a flat iron box, and from the box a single sheet of heavy parchment, which he laid on the black stone in front of the boy with a care that told Harry the parchment was evidence and was being handled as evidence. It was not large. That surprised him, that a thing which had eaten 7 years of his life could fit on one page. The parchment was good and the ink was black and the hand was old-fashioned and beautiful, a copperplate that sloped and looped, and at the foot of it was a signature Harry could not have forged in a year of trying, and beside the signature a wax seal the color of dried blood, pressed with a device of a phoenix and a wand and a star. "Read it to me," Harry said. "I can read, but read it the way it matters, the way a goblin reads it." Gornuk read. "I, Albus Percival Wulfric Brian Dumbledore, being lawful magical guardian of the minor Harry James Potter under the emergency provisions of the Wisengamot, do instruct the Bank of Gringotts to honor, against the Potter Trust, such disbursements for the ward's benefit as I in my sole discretion shall direct, including disbursements to sealed instruction which the bank shall not examine, the same being a matter of the ward's private welfare. This authority to stand until the ward's majority or my revocation, and to require no countersignature, the guardianship being established and beyond question." Gornuk laid the parchment flat. "There it is, every word a small door, and behind every door the dark, sole discretion, no countersignature, sealed instruction the bank shall not examine, until majority, and the keystone, the line that holds the rest up, the guardianship being established and beyond question." "That's the part that isn't true," Harry said. He did not phrase it as a guess. Gornuk's head came up. "It's the only sentence in the whole thing that argues," Harry said. "Everything else just instructs. Pay this, don't look at that, no one needs to sign but me. Those are orders. You don't argue an order, you just give it. But that line argues. It says the guardianship is established and beyond question. You only write beyond question about a thing that could be questioned. An honest paper wouldn't need to say it. The fact that he wrote it down means he knew when he wrote it that someone might ask, and he wanted the asking shut before it started." He looked up at Gornuk. "So I'm asking, where's the thing that makes the guardianship established? He says it's beyond question. Show me the answer to the question." For the second time that morning the chamber went quiet in the particular way that meant Harry had reached for the right thread. "The instrument cites a reference," Skerrock said slowly. He touched the gold script and a single line of it brightened, a number, a Wisengamot file mark, the sort of thing that pointed from one document to another. "When Ad 1 was lodged, the bank did what banks do. It did not take the holder's word that the guardianship was established. It asked for the proof. And it was given this reference, a file of the Wisengamot, recording the grant of emergency guardianship, dated 3 days after your parents died. The bank checked that the reference existed, that it bore the proper marks, that it was lodged where such grants are lodged. It did exist, it does exist, and so the bank accepted it because a Wisengamot guardianship grant properly filed is exactly the proof a bank is entitled to rely on. You said it exists, Harry said. You didn't say what's in it. No, Gornuk said softly. I did not, because the bank does not know what is in it. The file is sealed. It was lodged sealed, and it has remained sealed under the Chief Warlock's own authority for 7 years. The bank verified that a grant of guardianship was filed. The bank was not permitted to read the grant itself, only to confirm its existence and its marks. He paused. Do you see what that is, Heir? Do you see the shape of it? Harry saw. He sealed his own permission slip, Harry said. The guardianship is beyond question because the proof of it is in a box no one's allowed to open, and he's the one who locked the box, and he's the one whose job it is to decide who gets to open boxes like that, because he runs the court that keeps them. The cold, quiet thing had gone very still and very bright. The bank checked that there was a paper. It couldn't check that the paper said what he claimed it said. So for 7 years, the whole thing, the guardianship, the discretion, the 51,800 in the dark, all of it has stood on one sealed file that exactly one man in Britain has the power to seal, to verify, and to keep shut himself. He certified himself. He's his own evidence. That, said Skerok, is what I came to over a long night, and you have come to over a single page. A self-certified guardianship, sealed by the certifier, verified by no one, relied upon by a bank that was given no choice but to rely on it. It is not on its face unlawful. Emergency powers are real, the war was real, the haste was real, and a great many honest decisions were made sealed in those days. But it has never once been ratified in the open. It has never been examined by a single person who did not benefit from it. For 7 years, the most powerful man in magical Britain has been the guardian of the most famous child in magical Britain on the strength of a document he wrote, sealed and certified, and that no living soul but he has read. The iron stick came down once, and under cover of that document, 67,000 galleons. Then that's the center, Harry said. Not the gold is the proof, the center is the file. Because if the file's a lie, if it doesn't say what he claimed, if it was never really granted, if he certified himself, then AD1 falls, and if AD1 falls, then every galleon taken under it was taken without authority, and without authority it isn't a guardian spending a ward's keep, it's a man robbing a vault. He looked from Skerok to Gornuk and back. We don't have to prove he's a bad man, we have to open one box, everything's in the box. The box, Gornuk said, is sealed by the Chief Warlock of the Wisengamot and may be opened only by order of the Wisengamot over which the Chief Warlock presides. He let that land. You begin to see the mountain behind the thief. I see it, Harry said. It's still just a box. Box is open. The sealed instruction, the dark, 51,800. Harry's eye went back to the knot of gold from which nothing emerged, and he came at it again from the new angle the page had given him. You can't read the seal, he said. Fine, but the gold went somewhere when it went through it. Galleons don't stop existing. They move into another vault or another account or out into the world and buy a thing and the thing exists, or they go to a person and the person remembers. The seal stops you looking through the door. It doesn't stop you walking around the back and looking at where the door comes out. You can't read what the instruction says. But you can find every vault in this bank that received 51,800 galleons in 14 pieces on those exact 14 dates. He hid the names. He couldn't hide the dates because the gold has to move on a day, and the day is in your books on both ends. The silence this time had a different quality. Gornuk and Skerok looked at each other over the boy's head, and Bogrod by the door had gone very still. He is right, Gornuk said softly. Sweet iron, he is right. We cannot read the seal, but a transfer has 2 ends. We have been looking at the end we were forbidden to look at. We never thought to match the dates against the receiving side because no auditor in this bank thought a discretion seal could be unpicked from the back. How old did you say you were? Skerok asked, and there was something almost like a smile in it. 8, Harry said. It doesn't matter how old I am, it matters whether the dates are true. The dates, Skerok said, are true. He straightened and the iron stick came up into his hand, and when he spoke again it was to the scribe. Note it. The heir directs that the discretionary disbursements be reconciled by date against all receiving instruments within the bank's reach, the seal to be approached from the receiving end, the instruction itself left unread, the law untouched, and note further that the guardianship reference is to be challenged at the only door that can open it. He looked back at Harry. It is lawful, it is elegant. It will take time, and it will, I think, find him. Harry sat back. The cold, quiet thing was satisfied for the moment, and it returned the floor to him, and he asked the last question, the one he had been holding because it was not about gold. You keep saying he, Harry said. Dumbledore. Gornuk told me the titles, the school, the best man in the country. I want to know something the titles don't tell me. Why me? There are other orphans, there are other vaults. Why did the best man in the country decide, 11 days after my parents died, that my gold was his to spend and my life was a cupboard? What's special about me? The chamber changed. It was not anything Harry could have named, no sound, no movement, but the temperature of it shifted, and he had spent his life reading the temperature of rooms, and he knew that he had asked a question the room had hoped he would not ask yet. That, Gornuk said at last, is a question whose answer is not entirely ours to give, because part of it is wizard business and wizards guard it jealously, and part of it is wrapped in the old work I felt on you in the hall above, the binding that taught your name to forget itself. But I will tell you what the bank knows because you have asked, and because a witness who does not know why he is a target is a poor witness. He came down the length of the table and stood near the boy, and his voice was very even. You are not an ordinary orphan, Harry Potter. The night your parents died, the most dangerous wizard in living memory came to your house to kill you, an infant, and your parents died defending you, and then he was gone, and you were not, and you bore a mark where his curse had struck and failed. You are called in the world above the boy who lived. There is not a witch or wizard in Britain who does not know your name. There are men who have built their whole lives around what your survival meant. Harry took this in. It rearranged a great deal. It did not, he found, frighten him, but it sharpened the cold thing to a fine point because the answer was worse than the question. So I'm not just a vault, he said. No, I'm a vault and a symbol. And he has both because he made himself my guardian 11 days after before anyone could argue, and he put me where no one would find me, and he paid a woman to watch that I stayed put, and he spent the gold in the dark. Harry's voice did not change, but his hands had gone flat and still on the black stone. He didn't take my money because he wanted money. A man with his titles doesn't need 51,000 galleons. He took it because he could, and because taking it was part of holding the rest of me. The gold was just the part that left a record. Gornuk regarded him for a long moment. That, he said, is the most dangerous sentence you have spoken in this chamber, and I think it is true, and if you say it in front of the wrong people before we are ready, they will call you a madman and a puppet of goblins, because the man you are describing is the man the entire country has decided to love. Do you understand what you're setting yourself against? Not a thief, a legend. The thief is the easy part. We are very good at thieves. The legend is the mountain behind him. I understand, Harry said. You are 8. You keep saying that, and every time you say it, the numbers are still true. Does it change the audit that I'm 8? Does it make the dates less true? Does it make 51,800 a smaller number? No, said Gornuk. Then it doesn't matter that I'm 8. It only matters to him. To him it's the whole game that I'm small, that no one listens to children, that everyone will look at me and see a confused boy the goblins are using. Harry stood up from the stool, which made him taller than every goblin in the room, and he was aware of it, and he did not soften it. So I won't be a confused boy. I'll be the person who counted. That's all I have to be. I don't have to beat the legend. I just have to make the numbers add up where everyone can see them and let the numbers do to him what he did to me. He hid in the dark. I'm going to do everything in the light. For a moment the chamber held the words. Then Scarrock struck his iron stick once against the stone, and the sound of it rang down the long room and did not echo so much as settle like a verdict. That, the old goblin said, is not how a wizard thinks. A wizard thinks of spells and of strength and of who can shout loudest in a high room. You have thought in a single morning like a goblin that the ledger is the weapon, that the light is the field, that a true number cannot be argued with, only feared. He turned to Gornuk, and what passed between them now was not the reluctance of before, but something settled and decided. Master Auditor, this is no longer a matter for a branch. No, Gornuk agreed. A wizard has reached into a vault under our protection and taken from it 14 times by a trick of our own rules, and he has done it to the most watched child in Britain, and he has done it while wearing every honor his kind can bestow. Scarrock's voice dropped, and the drop made it carry further, not less. That is not a client's grievance to be settled by the return of gold and a fee. A vault is not a wizard's safe box that we are paid to mind. A vault is the bank, and the bank is the nation, and to break a vault is to break the nation, and there is a word in our tongue for what has been done here, and it is not theft. Theft is a small word. The word for this is older, and it does not translate kindly into the language of men. He looked at Harry. It must go to the director. It must go to Ragnarok. He alone can name what this is, and he alone can decide what the nation does about it. And I tell you now, heir, so that you are not surprised by what comes. When a wizard robs a vault, the bank does not sue. The bank does not negotiate. The bank remembers and the bank answers, and it has been a very long time since the bank has been given a reason to answer in full. Then take it to him, Harry said. Take it to Ragnarok. You do not ask what it will cost you, Gornuk observed, to stand before the director of Gringotts, to ask the nation to make your enemy its enemy. Be free. Nothing here is free. You understand that. I understand it better than anyone in this room, Harry said. I've spent my whole life paying for things that were supposed to be free. Food, a bed, being someone's family. He stood straight in the bruise-colored jumper in the chamber under London with the gold map of his stolen life burning on the table behind him. Tell me the price when you know it. I'll decide whether I can pay it. That's all anyone can do. Gornuk looked at Scarrock. Scarrock looked at Bograd, and Bograd, the junior teller who had first gone still at a small boy's name in the hall above, opened the iron-banded door and held it, and the cold air of the deep tunnels came in, smelling of stone and old gold and the long patience of a people who had built their faith out of vaults. Come then, Harry Potter, said Gornuk, we are going down. The director is below where the deep things are, and he will want to count you with his own eyes before he decides what you are worth and what your enemy will be made to pay. Harry walked to the door. Behind him the map burned on, the four streams and the knot of dark and the single gold sum hanging over the black stone, and the young scribe stayed to copy it, every figure, every date, in the patient hand of a people who forgot nothing, while the heir of the House of Potter went down into the dark to ask a nation to go to war over a number, and the number to the coin was true. Chapter 2 and Chapter 3. The Goblins' Fury. They went down for a long time. The cart that carried them did not run on the wide, bright tracks Harry had glimpsed from the hall above. It ran on a single rail of black iron that dropped at angles no Muggle railway would have dared, through tunnels that grew older as they fell, the tool marks on the walls changing from clean modern cuts to something rougher, and then to something that was not cut at all but grown, the rock folded and fluted as if it had been poured. The air got colder and then strangely warm again, and it carried a smell Harry had no name for, mineral and sweet, the smell of a place that had never once seen the sun. Bogrod rode with him. Gornuk and Scarrock rode in the cart behind. No one spoke, and Harry did not try to make them, because he understood that they were carrying him into the center of something, and that the silence was a courtesy to the center and not to him. "Are we going?" he asked once quietly, when the last of the modern tunnels had fallen away above them. "To the Hoard Heart," Bogrod said, "the deep vault, the first vault, the one the bank was built to keep before there were wizards to keep gold for." He did not look at Harry, he looked ahead into the dark the cart was eating. "No wizard has stood there in 400 years. You will be the first since the accord was signed. Do not touch anything. Do not speak unless the director speaks to you. And when you see what you are about to see, remember that you asked to come." The cart slowed. The tunnel opened. Harry had thought the great hall above was the largest room he would ever stand in. He revised the thought. The cavern had no far wall that he could find. It went up into a dark that was not empty. There were lights in it, very high, slow and gold, that might have been lamps or might have been something the rock itself did. And it went down past the ledge where the cart stopped into a vault so deep that the bottom of it was a guess, and the deep of it was full of gold. Not gold in chests, gold in drifts. Gold heaped and sloped and ridged like a country scene from a great height, mountains and valleys of it, coin and bar and worked metal and raw, and over all of it lay a light that did not come from the lamps above but seemed to rise off the metal itself, a deep slow glow like banked coals, and the air over it shimmered with heat that was not heat, and Harry understood, looking at it, that he was not looking at money. He was looking at a god. He did not think the word as a metaphor. The cold, quiet thing in him which weighed everything, weighed this and reported back that there was a presence in the cavern, vast and patient and aware, and that the presence was the gold, or was in the gold, or was the thing the gold was a body for, and that it had noticed him come in. On the ledge, between Harry and the drop, stood the director. Ragnarok was not large. None of them were large. But where Scarrock was old and Gornuk was sharp, Ragnarok was something else, something Harry's instincts read before his eyes finished the reading, a stillness like the stillness of the cavern itself, a creature who had stopped needing to move because the world had learned to come to him. His skin was the gray of weathered iron, and his eyes were the only bright thing in his face, and he wore no ornament at all, no gold, nothing, in the one place in the world most full of it, and Harry understood that too, that a being who stood at the heart of the hoard did not need to wear it. He was past wearing it, he kept it. "So," said Ragnarok, his voice was very quiet, and the cavern carried it, "the Potter child, who fell into my bank out of the air and triggered a reconciliation, and turned over the stone that has been lying in my hall for 7 years with the worms underneath it undisturbed." The bright eyes moved over Harry, the taped glasses, the bruise-colored jumper, and unlike every other goblin's, they did not catalogue, they weighed. "Come forward, to the edge. I will not let you fall. I want the hoard to see you, and I want to see you against it, because gold tells the truth about people, and I have not decided yet what you are." Harry walked to the edge. He stood at the lip of the great drop with the drifts of gold falling away beneath him and the slow glow rising into his face, and he did not look down at the gold. He looked at Ragnarok, because Ragnarok was the question in the room, and the gold was only the table it was being asked on. And the presence in the cavern, the vast patient awareness, pressed against him, not unkindly, but completely, the way deep water presses on a diver, and Harry stood in it and did not flinch and did not reach for it and did not look away. And after a moment he understood that he was being read the way the ledger had read his blood, all the way down every figure, and that there was nothing he could do about it, and so he did the only thing left, which was to let it, said Ragnarok. He turned, and the pressure eased, and Harry took a breath he had not known he was holding. "He does not want it," Ragnarok said to Gornuk, to Scarrock, to the cavern. "Stand a wizard at the edge of the Hoard Heart, and you learn the whole of him in a breath, because the gold reaches into him and asks what he would do if it were his, and almost every one of them answers the same. They want. Some want quietly and some want like a fire, but they want, and the hoard tastes the wanting and is not impressed, because wanting is the cheapest thing a creature can do." The bright eyes came back to Harry. This one does not want. He stood at the edge of more gold than his house has held in 9 generations, and he looked at me. He wants something. This child wants it cold and wants it deep, but it is not the gold. A pause. Tell me what it is, Potter. I have shown you mine. Tell me what you want and tell me true, because the horde is listening and it knows the taste of a lie. Harry did not have to think about the answer. He had known it since the alley before he had the words. The morning's map had only given it a shape. I want it counted, Harry said. All of it, everything that was done to me. Not the gold back. I'd take the gold back. The gold's mine, but that's not the thing. The thing is that for 7 years a man decided what happened to me, and no one wrote it down where it could be seen. The cupboard, the watching, the keep that wasn't keep, the 51,800 in the dark. He did it in a place where it didn't count on purpose, because if it didn't count he never had to answer for it. His voice was very level, and the cavern carried it the same as it had carried Ragnar's. I want it to count. I want every true thing he hid put down in the open where the numbers can't be argued with, and I want him to stand where everyone can see him and answer for the total. That's what I want, not revenge. Revenge is just another thing that doesn't get written down. I want the books opened. I want it to count. The cavern was silent. The slow gold glow rose and fell like breath. And then the presence in the gold did something Harry felt in his teeth and his breastbone, a deep resonance, a note below hearing, and the drifts of gold below him shifted, not collapsing, not sliding, but settling, the whole vast body of the horde turning over in its sleep like an animal that has caught a scent it likes. And Ragnar closed his bright eyes for a moment, and when he opened them something in his stillness had changed, had hardened, had decided. The horde knows the taste of that, Ragnar said softly. It is the oldest taste there is, older than gold. It is the taste of an account demanding to be balanced. He turned from the edge. Bring the boy back from the drop. We will talk of law now, and law is better done with the floor under one's feet. They drew back from the lip onto the broad ledge, and Ragnar seated himself on a block of black stone that had clearly served as a seat for a very long time, and he looked at Harry and at the 3 goblins ranged behind him, and he began, in the quiet voice the cavern made loud, to lay out the thing Harry had come down to ask for. You have been told, I think, that what was done to you is more than theft, Ragnar said. Skerok will have used the word older than theft and declined to translate it because it does not go gently into your tongue. I will give it to you because you are about to stake your life on it and you should know its name. In our speech it is Kruvaskin. The nearest your language comes is desecration, not the theft of a thing, the violation of a sacred place. To you a vault is a strongbox, a convenience, a service the bank provides for a fee, your property kept safe behind our doors. That is not what a vault is. To us a vault is a covenant. When gold passes into our keeping, it passes into the horde's protection, and the horde's protection is not a service. It is an oath sworn by the whole nation, renewed in blood and iron since before your kind learned to write, that what is given into the dark of the bank will be kept faithful unto the last coin, against any hand, including the hand of the one who put it there, including the hand of kings. His voice did not rise. When a man reaches past our doors and takes what was sworn safe, he does not rob a customer. He spits on the oath. He tells the nation that its sacred word is worth nothing. That is Kruvaskin, and there is no older crime in our law, and there is no crime we punish more completely, because a bank whose oath can be broken without answer is not a bank. It is a hole in the ground that the strong rob at their leisure. Our whole existence stands on the promise that this does not happen. When it happens, we do not weigh the gold, we answer the spit. And it happened, Harry said, and it happened, Ragnar agreed. 14 times to a child, under cover of a paper the man wrote and sealed himself, while he wore the highest honors his kind can give. Yes, Potter, it happened. The audit is sound, the dates are true, the instrument is what Skerok says it is, and the man who did it is the man your whole world has decided is the best of them. He let the silence hold. Now. Here is the law and here is the trouble, and I will give you both so that you choose with open eyes. By the law of the horde, this crime is ours to answer fully by any means our custom allows, against the one who committed it, and our custom allows a great deal, and once in the elder days allowed everything. By the law of wizards, set down in the treaty your kind and mine signed to end the last of our wars, our hands are bound, the accord of iron. Tell me about the accord, Harry said. The accord of iron, Ragnar's mouth moved, and it was not a smile. Signed 800 years ago after the last Goblin War, which we did not lose. Whatever your histories tell you, we ended it, which is a different thing. The accord is the price both sides paid to stop the killing. Under it, the nation of goblins keeps the gold of wizards and is paid and protected for the keeping. And under it, the nation of goblins does not act against a wizard in wizard lands by force, save through the law of wizards. We may guard, we may refuse, we may close our doors. We may within the bank do as we please, for the bank is sovereign goblin ground. But we may not march out of it with iron in our hands to answer a wrong, however sacred, against a wizard who stands on wizard soil under wizard law. That is the chain on us. We accepted it. We keep our word, Potter, even the words that bind us, because a people who break their own oaths cannot ask the world to keep its oaths to them. That is the whole of us in one sentence. Remember it. Harry was quiet, working it, the cold thing turning the law over the way it turned numbers. "So you can't touch him," he said slowly. "Not the old way, not force. The treaty stops you. The treaty stops us. But the treaty's a deal. Both sides got something. You keep the gold safe, the wizards leave you alone, you don't march out with iron." Harry looked up. "What happens to the deal when one of them robs the thing he asked you to keep safe? When the chief warlock himself, the man whose job is the wizard law that the treaty makes you answer through, when he's the one who broke into the vault, the cold thing had found the edge of it. He's not just a thief, he's a thief who's standing on the treaty to protect himself. He robbed the vault and then he hides behind the same law that says you can't come after him. He's using your own oath against you. The thing that binds your hands is the thing he's counting on." Ragnock went very still, and it was a different stillness than before, and Harry realized he had said something the director had not expected an 8-year-old to say. "Yes," Ragnock said at last, very quietly. "That is exactly what he has done, and exactly why it has stood for 7 years, and exactly why my auditors brought it to me instead of settling it, because they knew, as you have just seen in a breath, that this is not a problem of gold. It is a problem of the accord itself. A wizard of the law has used the law to rob a vault and the treaty to shield the robbing. If we answer the old way, we break the accord, and we hand every enemy we have the excuse to call us oath breakers and treaty traitors, and 800 years of peace bought with goblin blood comes undone over one child's gold, however sacred." He leaned forward. "And if we do nothing, if we let the chief warlock rob a vault and walk because the treaty ties our hands, then every wizard in Britain learns that the bank's oath can be broken by anyone large enough to hide behind the law, and the Horde's protection is revealed as a lie, and we are finished as surely as if we had marched. Do you see the trap, Potter? He has built it perfectly. We cannot act, and we cannot fail to act. He has made our oath into a noose and put it round our own throats." "Then you don't answer the old way," Harry said, "and you don't do nothing, you answer through the wizard law, the way the treaty says you have to." "The wizard law," said Ragnock, "is presided over by the man who robbed the vault." "For now," Harry said. The two words sat in the cavern. Ragnock looked at him for a long moment, and then he made a sound Harry had not heard from a goblin before, a low rasp deep in the chest that might in a creature that smiled have been a laugh, and might in this one have been something with more teeth in it. "For now," the director repeated. "You see it, you see the only road. The crime is Kruvaskin and ours by every law of the Horde, but the accord forbids us the old answer, and so we must take the new one. We must answer him through his own law in his own court with our evidence laid before his own peers, and we must do it so completely that the law he hides behind becomes the law that breaks him. We cannot march on the legend, so we will audit the legend. We will do to his standing what he did to your trust, open it, count it, lay it in the light, and let the total speak." The bright eyes did not leave Harry. "It can be done. It has never been done, not to one so high, but it can be done, and the boy who stood at the edge of my horde and did not want it is, I begin to think, the one who can do it, because the law will not hear a goblin, Potter. The law of wizards does not let my kind bring suit or give testimony as a wizard may. But it must hear an heir of an ancient and noble house, even an heir of 8, if that heir stands and speaks and will not be moved. You are the one mouth in all of this that the wizard law cannot refuse to hear. The evidence is ours, the voice must be yours, neither is enough alone." "Then we do it together," Harry said. "Then we do it together," Ragnock agreed. "And that, Potter, is a thing that must be made, not merely said, because what I am about to spend on you is not a fee and cannot be spent on a handshake. To make the nation your ally, to bend the whole patience and memory and gold of Gringotts to the opening of one man, is not a service the bank sells. It is a compact. It binds you as it binds us. And it is sworn here at the Horde Heart in the old way, because the old way is the only way the gold will witness, and we will want the gold to witness, you and I both, before this is done." He rose from the black stone. "Bring the iron," Ragnock said. Scarrock came forward, and from within his coat he drew not the iron-banded box of evidence, but something else, a band of black metal, plain, unworked, the width of 2 fingers, a ring sized not for a finger but for a wrist, and Harry understood that it was very old and that it had been carried down here for exactly this, and that the goblins had decided, somewhere between the audit chamber and the deep, that he would say yes. "This is the oath of the Iron Friend," Ragnock said. "It is older than the accord, older than the bank as you know it. It was sworn in the elder days between the nation and those rare few of your kind who stood with us when standing with us cost everything, and there were such, Potter, whatever your histories say, a handful across the centuries, and we remember every one of their names because we forget nothing, and a debt of honor is the one debt the Horde never lets lapse." He held the black band in both hands. "It is not a chain. Mark that before you choose. It does not bind you to obey us, and it does not bind us to obey you. It binds us to the truth between us. While you wear it, you cannot lie to the nation, and the nation cannot lie to you, not in word, not in ledger, not in silence meant to deceive. We will keep nothing from you that touches your cause. You will keep nothing from us that touches it either. We will spend our patience and our gold and our memory to open your enemy, and you will spend your voice and your name and your standing to carry what we open into the light, and neither of us will betray the other while the iron is on you, because the iron will not allow it, it will know, and the horde will know, and there is no court above the horde. His bright eyes held Harry's. It is the most honest thing two creatures can do to each other, and it is therefore the most dangerous, because most creatures cannot bear to be known. I have watched you be known twice today, by the ledger and by the horde, and you did not flinch from either. So I will offer it, which I did not expect to do when they brought me word this morning of a child fallen out of the air. Will you take the iron, Harry Potter? Will you be iron friend to the nation, and let us be the same to you, until the man who robbed your vault has answered for the whole of it in the light? Harry looked at the black band. He thought about it properly because they had told him to, and because it was the first thing anyone had ever offered him that came with a cost stated honestly up front, instead of a kindness that turned out to be a bill. You cannot lie to the nation, and the nation cannot lie to you. He turned it over. He had spent his life among people who lied to him as easily as breathing the expense of you. We don't ask for thanks, and the offer on the table was the exact opposite of every deal he had ever been given. And the cold, quiet thing in him, which trusted nothing, examined it from every side and could not find the trap, because the trap, if there was one, was only the truth, and Harry had never once in his life been hurt by the truth, only by the dark around it. What does it cost you? Harry asked. Not me, you, the nation, to make me iron friend. You said it's not free. What does it cost the goblins? Ragnar's stillness deepened, and the rasp came again lower. He asks what it costs us, the director said softly to the cavern, to the gold. 8 years old, offered the friendship of a nation and a fortune's worth of patience, and he asks what it costs the giver. The bright eyes came back. It costs us this, Potter, that we cannot abandon you. Once the iron is on you, you are not a client we may drop when the case grows hard, nor a wizard we may forget when the politics turn against us, and they will turn, for we will be moving against the most beloved man in Britain, and there will come a day, I promise you, when it would be far cheaper for the nation to let you fall and keep our peace. The iron forbids it. We'll have bound ourselves to a child's war, and we will not be able to walk away from it without breaking the oldest oath we keep, and a people who break the oath of the Iron Friend are worse than oath breakers. We are Kruvaskin against ourselves. So we do not offer it lightly, and we have not offered it in 400 years, and I am offering it to you today with my eyes open, because the horde tasted what you want and judged it worthy, and the horde does not flatter. He held out the band. That is the cost. We will be unable to betray you even when betraying you would save us. Now you know what you are asking us to spend. Choose. Harry held out his arm. I'll take the iron, he said. Ragnar slid the black band onto Harry's thin wrist, and it did not fall off, though it was sized for a creature with no wrist at all, and at the moment the metal closed the cavern changed. The slow gold glow that rose off the horde brightened all at once, not like a lamp turned up, but like a held breath let go. And the note below, hearing that Harry had felt in his teeth, swelled until the whole cavern hummed with it, and the air over the gold shivered into shapes, not pictures, not quite, but presences. A vast attention turning fully toward the small place where a goblin and a boy stood joined by a band of iron, and Harry felt the oath take hold of him from the inside. Coldness that was not the cold he knew, but its opposite, a cold that was clean, that cut away the dark he had lived in and left only what was true. And for one moment that he would never afterward find words for, he felt the nation around him. All of it, every goblin alive and every goblin remembered. The whole patient, terrible loyalty of a people who forgot nothing, and the nation felt him. The cupboard and the counting and the cold and the want that was not for gold, and neither of them looked away. The light settled, the note faded. The band of iron lay cool and ordinary on his wrist, and it would not, he somehow knew, ever come off until the thing was done. It is made, said Ragnar, and there was something in his quiet voice that had not been there before, a weight, the weight of a being who had just spent something he could not get back. The nation is your friend, Harry Potter, and you are ours, and the horde has witnessed it, and there is now no power in this world or under it that can make Gringotts abandon your cause. He stepped back, and so, the war is declared, though no one above will hear the declaring for a while yet. From this hour the whole of the bank turns to the opening of Albus Dumbledore. Skerrock will reconstruct the gold, every coin, by the road you found, the receiving end, the dates. Ornuk will build the case the wizard law will hear, and I will turn to the one matter that cannot wait, because the moment we move he will know we are moving. Harry looked up. Why will he know? Because the law that binds us also binds itself fairly, Gornuk said, stepping forward. The accord requires that when the bank suspends an authority over a vault, when we freeze add one, as the audit now compels us to do, we must notify the holder of that authority that it is suspended pending inquiry. We cannot move against him in secret. The treaty forbids the bank to act against a wizard's interest without his knowledge, lest the bank become a weapon used in the dark, which is the very thing it exists to prevent. He paused. It is, in the ordinary case, a fair and good law. In this case it means that within the day an owl will reach Albus Dumbledore bearing a notice, sealed by the bank, that his authority over the Potter Trust has been suspended pending a formal audit. Will not be told what we have found, he will not be told that you are here, but he will be told that the box has been touched, and a man who built a thing this careful will understand the instant he reads it that someone somehow has begun to count. The cavern was quiet. Good, Harry said. They looked at him. He spent 7 years sure no one would ever count, Harry said. Let him spend a day knowing someone has. Let him not know who or how much or where I am. Let him sit with it. The cold, clean thing the iron had left in him turned the situation over and found it satisfactory. He hid in the dark because the dark felt safe. The first thing I want him to feel is that it isn't anymore. Far above them, on a green hill in the north, in a round room full of whirring silver instruments and a phoenix the color of fire, an old man with a long white beard and half-moon glasses broke the seal on a letter from the bank and read it and went very still. He read it a second time. He set it down on the desk among the spinning instruments, and he laid one long finger upon it, and for a moment the famous twinkle was entirely absent from his eyes, and what was in their place was not guilt and was not fear, but something colder and far more dangerous than either. The calm, swift, recalculating attention of a man who has built a great and necessary work over many years, and who has just been informed that one timber, deep in the foundation, has begun impossibly to shift. "Ah," said Albus Dumbledore very softly to the empty room, "already," and he did not reach for his wand, and he did not call for help, and he did not panic. He drew a fresh sheet of parchment toward him and dipped his quill and began in a beautiful sloping copperplate to write, and what he wrote was not a denial and not a defense, but a list of names of people who owed him, of moves that could be made quietly and early before the thing took shape, because Albus Dumbledore had not become the most powerful man in magical Britain by losing, and he did not intend to begin now, over a sum of gold he had spent, every coin of it. For the good of a world that did not yet know it would need it. Deep below him, far past the reach of his instruments, a boy in a bruise-colored jumper wore a band of black iron on his wrist and watched a nation turn, for the first time in 400 years, to the opening of one man. The war had two sides now. Both of them were patient. Only one of them was right, and rightness, as both of them knew, had never yet won a war by itself. Chapter 3 and Chapter 4. Tracing the gold. The work took 11 days, and Harry was present for every hour of it, because the iron on his wrist meant the nation kept nothing from him, and because he had discovered that he was good at it. They gave him a room of his own off the audit chamber, and a desk, and a lamp that burned without smoke, and they gave him, this was Scarrock's doing, and Harry understood it for the gift. It was real work, not a child's version, the dates. The 14 disbursements out of the dark, and the whole of the banks receiving records for the matching days, and the task he had named himself standing at the black table, to walk round the back of the seal and find where the gold came out. He learned the goblin method by doing it. A transfer through a sealed instruction did not, it turned out, vanish cleanly even from the bank's own side. It left a shadow, a notation of weight and time, a record that a quantity of gold had moved on a given hour even where the destination was hooded. The seal hid the name on the far end. It did not hide that the far end existed, or when the gold arrived there, and gold that left the Potter Trust on a Tuesday had to land somewhere on that Tuesday, because the bank balanced its books every midnight, and an unbalanced book was, to a goblin, very nearly a physical pain. So Harry matched Tuesdays. It was slow and it was exact, and it suited him entirely. He took the 14 dates, and against each one he laid the bank's record of every vault and every account that had received an unexplained deposit within the day, and most days there were dozens, because Gringotts was the bank of a nation and gold moved constantly, but he was not looking for a deposit. He was looking for a deposit of the right weight, on the right day, into a destination that itself behaved strangely afterward, that did not spend the gold like a man who had earned it, but passed it onward quickly into another hood. A clean man receives gold and keeps it or spends it, Scarrock said, leaning over Harry's desk on the third day, watching the boy build a chain of dates down a long sheet. A guilty man receives gold and moves it again, because the first vault is never the last vault. The first vault is only a door dressed up as a room. You are not looking for where the gold landed. You are looking for where it would not sit still. Harry found the first pass-through on the fourth day. It was a vault held in a name he did not know, a shell, Gornuck called it. A vault opened for no purpose the bank could find except to hold gold for an hour and pass it on, and it had received, on the date of the third disbursement, a weight of gold that matched the third disbursement to the half-sickle, and it had held that gold for less than a day before sending it on, hooded again, to a second vault, which had held it briefly and sent it to a third. Harry traced the chain across 4 vaults in a single afternoon, leaning over the sheets with the lamp throwing his shadow up the rough stone wall, and at the end of the 4th vault the chain stopped, because the 4th vault did not pass the gold on. The 4th vault kept it. There, Harry said, and sat back, and the cold, quiet thing in him was very bright. That's a real one. The first 3 are doors, the 4th one's a room. Whose is it? Gornuck read the vault's registry, and his many-knuckled finger stopped, and he was quiet for a moment. It is held, Gornuck said, by a trust styled the Phoenix Endowment. a charitable instrument registered lawfully, its stated purpose the relief of those harmed by the late war, its registered administrator, its sole signatory, the one hand that may draw upon it, he looked up, is Albus Dumbledore. Harry looked at the chain on his sheet, the Potter Trust, the three hooded doors, the Phoenix Endowment, the name at the end of it. He passed it through 3 shells to break the trail, Harry said slowly, and then he put it in a charity he runs himself, so that if anyone ever did walk round the back and find where the gold came out, they'd find what? A good cause, war relief, orphans and widows. The most powerful man in Britain, quietly funding the recovery from the war he ended out of his own discretion. The cold thing turned it over and found the bottom of it. It's the keep column again, it's the same trick, bigger. The charity isn't where he hides the gold, the charity is what he'd say the gold was for, it's the alibi for the alibi. Then we must ask the question the charity is built to make us not ask, Gornuk said. What did the Phoenix Endowment do with 51,800 galleons? A charity spends. A charity leaves a trail of good works, of relieved widows and mended roofs and gold given out. Let us see the trail. They saw the trail. It took another 3 days, and what it showed was the part of the whole affair that Harry would think about longest afterward, because it was the part that was not simple. The Phoenix Endowment had spent gold, a great deal of it, in fact, but not only the Potter gold, and not in the way a clean charity spends. It had paid for things, and the things were real. A house in the north, bought outright, that the records described as a place of refuge. Some sent quietly and without receipt to people whose names Gornuk read off in a flat voice, and most of whom meant nothing to Harry. A widow here, an orphaned family there, a man maimed in the last year of the war and unable to work. Some of it plainly had gone to exactly what the charity claimed. Some of it had gone to other things, harder to name, payments to people who were not widows or orphans at all, but who, Gornuk said slowly, reading the pattern, looked very much like a network. People placed in useful positions, people kept loyal, people watching things and being paid to watch, the way a woman 2 streets from a cupboard in Surrey had been paid to watch. It is not a thief's vault, Scarrock admitted at last on the 7th day, and he said it with the particular disgust of an old auditor forced to acknowledge a complication. I have seen 1,000 thieves' vaults, and they all look the same. The gold goes in and it comes out as a bigger house, a younger wife, a string of horses, a seat bought at a high table. This is not that. This man did not buy himself a single thing. Every coin that left your trust and reached the Phoenix Endowment was spent on the world, on relief, on refuge, on a web of quiet people doing quiet, useful things across the whole of magical Britain. He robbed a child to fund a kingdom of good deeds. The iron stick tapped the floor once, which is worse ere not better, and I will tell you why if you do not already see it. I see it, Harry said. He had seen it on the 5th day, and he had been sitting with it since. If he'd bought a house and a wife and horses, he'd be a thief, and a thief can just be wrong, Harry said. But he didn't. He spent it all on good things, which means he never once thought he was doing something wrong. He thinks he's right. He thinks my parents' gold was better spent on his web of quiet people than on me. And he thinks that because he decided somewhere that he matters more than I do, that what he's building matters more than one boy's inheritance, more than one boy's life, and so taking it wasn't theft, it was just moving a resource to where it would do the most good, to where he would do the most good with it. Harry's voice did not change, but his hands had gone flat on the desk. A thief you can shame. He's not. He's a man who's sure, and a man who's sure he's right is the hardest thing in the world to stop, because every time you show him what he did, he'll just explain why it was necessary, and he'll believe the explanation because he built his whole life on believing it. He looked up at Scarrock. That's worse, you're right, it's much worse. The old goblin looked at the boy for a long moment. You will need to remember that, Scarrock said quietly, on the day you stand in front of him. Because that is the man you will face, not a thief caught with his hand in the vault, ashamed and lying. A great man, calm and certain and kind, who will look at you with real sorrow and explain, gently, that he did it all for you, for your world, for the war that is coming, and who will believe every word, and who will be so very good at saying it that half the room will believe it too. The gold is the easy part, Heir. We have the gold. The hard part is the certainty. You cannot out-argue certainty. You can only outcount it. Stay on the numbers. The numbers do not care how sure he is. The numbers do not care how sure he is, Harry repeated. He wrote it at the top of his sheet, in his own cramped hand, above the chain of dates. Good. On the 8th day they took him to see the family vault, and he had not asked to go, and he understood afterward that the going had been Ragnar's decision and not Gornuk's, because the director had reasons of his own for wanting the heir to stand in it before the war began in earnest. It was not in the deep where the hoard heart lay. It was high in the old levels, behind a door of dark metal that had no keyhole and answered only to Potter blood, and when Gornuk pressed Harry's hand flat to it, the metal warmed and parted without a sound, and the boy stepped through into a room that had been waiting for him for 7 years. It was not full of gold, though there was gold, neat and stacked and ordinary against the walls, the deep purse Scarrock had spoken of, the part of the estate the thief had not been able to reach without breaking a door that red blood. But the gold was not what stopped Harry in the doorway. the room held a life. There were trunks and books and a set of fine old furniture under dust sheets, and a rack of dueling wands that had belonged to dead potters, and on a shelf at the center, where someone had clearly meant the heir to find them first, a row of moving photographs in silver frames. Harry crossed to them. He did not hurry. He had learned not to hurry toward things he wanted, because wanting them where someone could see was how they were taken away. But there was no one in the room to take anything, only the goblins at the door, and they did not count as watchers in the old sense, and so he let himself cross the floor and look. His mother had red hair and green eyes, and she was laughing in the photograph, turning to a tall, untidy man with Harry's own face grown up and glasses like Harry's own. And the man was looking at her as if she were the whole of the world, and between them, held against the woman's shoulder, was a baby with a tuft of black hair, and the baby was reaching for the camera, and all three of them were so plainly, so completely happy that Harry stood and looked at it and felt the cold, quiet thing in him go still in a way it had not gone still before, not colder for once, but simply quiet, emptied, looking at the only picture he had ever seen of the people his aunt had told him died drunk in a car. They had not died drunk in a car. He had known that for a week as a fact. He knew it differently now, standing in the room they had filled with the things they meant him to have, looking at his mother, laughing. He let himself feel it once all the way, and then he set it down, not away, not hidden, only down, where a fact rests after it has been understood, and he turned from the photographs, because the iron on his wrist did not permit him to lie to himself any more than to the nation, and the truth was that grief was real and the war was also real, and he could carry only one of them into the high room. You see why he diverted the rents, Gornuk said quietly from the door, and he did not apologize for breaking the moment, because he had judged correctly that the moment was over. He could not open this door. The family vault reads blood, and he had none of yours, and so the deep purse was always beyond him. He could spend the trust which the instrument unlocked, but not this, so he did the next thing. The income that should have flowed in here into the room he could not enter, he caught at the door and turned aside into the dark before your bloodlock could claim it. 7,295 galleons of rents and yields that should have come home to this room, to wait for you, taken at the threshold because the threshold itself he could not cross. The goblin's flat voice carried in the still air. It is, I think, the only place in the whole of the theft where you can see his frustration. He took everything he could reach. This he could not reach, and it galled him, and so he made sure that at least the new gold would never reach it either. Look at the shelves, heir. Look at what he could not take, and understand that he would have if blood had let him. Harry looked at the photographs, at the books, at the dueling wands of dead potters, at the whole inheritance that had sat sealed behind a blood door while he wore turned-up trousers 200 miles away. He'd have taken the pictures too, Harry said. It was not a question. He would have taken whatever served the cause, Gornuk said, and he would have grieved sincerely as he did it, and he would have been certain it was right. That is the man. You have now seen the one room he wanted and could not have. Remember it. It is the shape of the only hunger in him, and a hunger that cannot be fed is the place where even a careful man grows careless. He stepped back from the door. Take one thing if you wish. It is yours, all of it, but a boy going to war should carry one true thing out of the room his parents left him. Choose, and then we will go back to the dark and finish the count. Harry took the photograph of the three of them laughing. He did not say anything about it, and the goblins did not ask, and he put it carefully inside his jumper against his chest, and that was the only thing he took, and it was enough. That was the gold and the room and the rents. There remained the will. Harry had not asked about a will because he had not known there was one to ask about. He had been an infant when his parents died, and no one had ever spoken to him of them at all, beyond his aunt's poisonous scraps, that his father had been a drunk, his mother a freak, that they had died in a car crash, which he now knew with a cold certainty was simply one more thing that had not been written down where it could be checked. It was Gornuk who raised it on the 9th day, setting a slim iron case on Harry's desk with a gravity that made the boy put down his quill. The bank is not only your keeper, heir, Gornuk said. For the House of Potter, the bank is also executor, the one who carries out the will, who sees the dead's wishes done. It is an old arrangement made by your grandfather, and it is the reason there is a thing in this box that has survived 7 years when I think it was meant to be lost. He opened the case. Inside lay a single folded parchment, sealed with the Potter arms in wax gone dark with age. The last will and testament of James and Lily Potter, lodged with Gringotts as executor 3 months before they died. There is a copy in the world above in the keeping of the ministry, but that copy was sealed the week after their deaths by order of the chief warlock, under the same emergency powers that built Ad 1, and it has never been opened since. He set one finger on the parchment. The wizard world has not read this will in 7 years, but a wizard's seal does not bind the bank's own copy because the bank is executor in its own right and answers to the dead, not to the chief warlock. We have always been able to read it. We were simply never asked because no one knew to ask until a boy fell out of the air and began turning over stones. He looked up. Will you hear it? Read it, Harry said. Gornuk read it. Most of it was gold and property, the ordinary furniture of a noble house passing to its heir, and Harry let it wash past because he had seen the gold already. but there was a clause near the end that Gornuk read slowly, and at the first words of it Harry went still, and at the last words of it the cold clean thing the iron had left in him turned to something with an edge. In the matter of the guardianship of our son, Harry James Potter, should we not live to raise him, Gornuk read, it is our will and our most solemn wish that he be raised by his godfather, Sirius Orion Black, whom we name first guardian, and should Sirius be unable or unfit, then by Frank and Alice Longbottom, who are his family to us, and should they be unable, then by Andromeda Tonks of the House of Black, who has a good heart and a child of her own, and would not let our son be alone. And we set down plainly so that there can be no mistaking it. Under no circumstances whatsoever is Harry to be given into the keeping of Lily's sister, Petunia Dursley of Surrey, nor her husband, who do not love him and would not, and who would raise him to be small. We have seen how they live. We would sooner he were raised by strangers. This is our will. Let no one set it aside. The room was quiet. Let no one set it aside, Gornuk said again, and folded the parchment. It is signed by both your parents. It is witnessed. It is dated 3 months before their deaths, which is to say it is not the panicked scrawl of people in fear, but the considered wish of a young family making sure. And it names 3 guardians before it reaches the bottom of the list, and not one of the 3 is Albus Dumbledore, and the one name it forbids plainly, in words a child could not misread, under no circumstances whatsoever, is the one name your guardian chose. He did not merely fail to follow this will ere, he sealed it so that no one could follow it, and then he did the single thing it expressly forbade. Harry sat with it. He found that this hurt in a way the gold had not, and he let it once because the iron had taught him that a true thing felt was not a weakness but a fact like any other, and the fact was this: his parents had thought about him. 3 months before they died, sitting somewhere safe and warm and not yet dead, they had thought specifically about what would happen to him if they were gone, and they had not wanted the cupboard, had wanted him loved, had named people with good hearts, had written down for him, though they could not have known he would one day read it, that they would sooner he were raised by strangers than be made small. They had tried to reach across their own deaths to protect him. And one man had folded the paper shut and dropped him into the exact dark they had forbidden. Sirius Black, Harry said when he could. First guardian, where is he? In Azkaban, Gornuk said, the wizard prison. Convicted the week after your parents died of betraying them to their killer and of murder, and never tried in open court, sentenced on the authority of the same emergency powers, by the same council, in the same haste. I tell you this plainly because the iron does not let me soften it. I do not know whether he is guilty. The bank holds no finding, but I will tell you what I find strange, and you may weigh it as you like, that the man your parents named first guardian, the one obstacle to any other claiming you, was removed permanently and without a trial in the same week the will was sealed and the guardianship was certified. He let it sit. I draw no conclusion, I only count. And when I count, I do not like how neatly that fits. The Longbottoms, Harry said, tortured into madness by the killer's servants that same winter, they live but they cannot raise a child, they cannot raise themselves. Gornuk's voice was flat. Andromeda Tonks, third named, is alive and well and was never asked. The bank has no record of any inquiry being made of her ever in 7 years. She has a daughter near your age. She has by every account a good heart, exactly as your mother wrote, and she lives an hour's owl from the cupboard you grew up in, and no one ever told her you needed a home because the will that named her was sealed by the man who took you instead. Harry wrote the 3 names on his sheet under the chain of dates in his cramped hand. Sirius Black, Azkaban, no trial. Frank and Alice Longbottom, mad. Andromeda Tonks, alive, willing, never asked. Then the will goes in, he said. Everything goes in. The gold is one column, the will is another. Together they say the same thing twice, that he didn't just spend my money. He set aside my parents' actual written wishes to do it, and he put me exactly where they wrote I must never go, and he made sure the one person who could have stopped him was in prison, and the one person who would have taken me was never told I existed. That's not a guardian making hard choices in a war. That's a man who wanted a particular outcome and removed everything in the way of it. He set down the quill, names and dates, it all adds up, it just adds up to something bigger than a theft. It adds up, Gornuk agreed quietly, to the deliberate disposal of a child of which the theft of his gold is merely the part that left a ledger. Yes, that is what it adds up to. It is, I will tell you now, a far more dangerous thing to say in the world above than 67,000 galleons, because gold is gold and even his admirers understand gold, but to say that Albus Dumbledore stole a boy, disposed of the boy who lived for his own purposes, that they will not forgive you for saying, true or not. You will have to be very careful which of these you say and when and to whom. I'll say the gold first, Harry said. The gold is the door, you can't argue with the gold. Once they've swallowed the gold, once they've had to admit out loud in the open that he took it, then the will and then the rest, each one a little harder to deny than the last because they've already admitted the first one. He looked at the iron on his wrist. You don't knock a mountain down, you take the bottom stone, the one you can prove, and you let the rest follow it. The gold is the bottom stone. It was on the 10th day that they learned the mountain had begun to move on its own. Bogrod brought the word, coming into Harry's room without his usual composure, and what he carried was not gold but a notice, a copy of an inquiry that had arrived that morning at the bank's upper offices on ministry parchment, under a seal Harry was learning to recognize. "He has not waited," Bogrod said. "Read it. He is good. He is very good. Read what he has done." Harry read it. It was, on its face, the kindest thing imaginable. It was a formal inquiry, lodged by the office of the Chief Warlock, expressing grave concern for the welfare of the minor Harry James Potter, who, it had come to the Chief Warlock's attention, was no longer in residence at his registered home, and whose magical guardian had distressingly been denied access to the boy's trust by the bank without explanation, raising the gravest fears that the vulnerable child had been removed from his lawful guardian's protection and was being held influenced or exploited by parties unknown. The inquiry requested, with the full weight of the Chief Warlock's office, that the bank confirm the boy's safety and produce him to a representative of the ministry, that his welfare might be assured. Harry read it twice, then he put it down, and the cold, quiet thing in him did something it had not done in 10 days. It admired. "He's turned it around," Harry said softly. "He got the freeze notice. He knows the box has been touched. He doesn't know how much we have or what we found or even that I'm the one who triggered it, but he knows someone's moving, and instead of waiting to find out who, he's moving first, and he's moving as the victim. Look, he's not the man who robbed a vault. He's the worried guardian whose poor ward has gone missing and whose access has been mysteriously cut off by a bank that won't explain itself. He's already telling the story where he's the kind one and where the party's unknown holding a vulnerable child in the dark." Harry looked up, and there was something almost like respect in his cold face, and it was the most dangerous thing in the room. "He's making the rescue of me into the crime, so that when I come out and say he robbed me, everyone will already have heard that I'm a confused boy in the hands of goblins who got to me first. He's not defending the theft. He's making sure no one will believe the victim before the victim's even spoken." "Yes," said Gornuk, who had come to the door. "That is exactly what he is doing, and he has done it in 10 days from a single freeze notice, knowing nothing. I have spent 200 years auditing wizards, and I have never been afraid of one. I confess to you, heir, that I am beginning to understand why your whole world is afraid of this one, not because he is cruel, but because he is fast and kind and always 3 moves ahead, and he has just made his first move before we have finished making our case, and his first move is to poison the well you must drink from." He paused. "What do we do?" Harry was quiet for a moment, looking at the inquiry, at the beautiful sloping copperplate of the signature at the bottom, the same hand that had signed Ad 1. "We don't give him the answer he's built for," Harry said. "He wants us to refuse to produce me, to hide me, so he can say, 'Look, they won't even show me the boy. What are they hiding?' So we don't hide, we don't refuse." He set the notice flat on the desk. "We answer that the heir of the House of Potter is safe, is well, is in the lawful keeping of his bank pending the reconciliation of his accounts, and is not missing but present, and that he will be produced in person willingly at the one place his guardian cannot control the room." He looked up at Gornuk, and the iron was cold on his wrist, and his voice was very level. "The Wisengamot. Tell them I'll come out of the bank to stand in front of the Wisengamot. Not to a ministry representative in a quiet office where it's his word against a child's, in the open, in the high room, with the numbers in my hand and the whole court watching." A pause. "He wants to make my rescue look like the crime. Fine, let's have it out where everyone can see which one of us is telling the truth. He's the one who needs the room dark. I'm the one who's been counting in the light. Let's turn the lights on and see who flinches." Gornuk looked at the boy in the bruise-colored jumper, 8 years old, with a band of black iron on his wrist and a photograph against his chest and a chain of true dates on the desk in front of him, calmly proposing to walk out of the safest place in Britain and into the one room where the most powerful man in the country held the chair, and the old auditor inclined his head, the second time he had done so, and this time it was not a fraction. It was a bow. "I will tell the director," Gornuk said, "that the Iron Friend wishes to take the field. And I will tell him I think that the Iron Friend has chosen the ground well, because the one thing a man 3 moves ahead cannot survive is a board he does not control." He turned to go and stopped at the door. "It will not be 11 days from here, heir. From here it will be fast and it will be ugly, and he will not make his second move as gently as his first. Are you ready for that?" Harry looked down at his sheet, the chain of dates, the Phoenix endowment, the 3 forbidden guardians, the line at the top in his own cramped hand. The numbers do not care how sure he is. He put one hand flat against his jumper where the photograph lay over his heart and left it there a moment. "I've been getting ready for this my whole life," he said. "I just didn't know what it was called until last week." He picked up his quill. "Send the answer. Let's begin." Chapter 4 and Chapter 5. The establishment resists the bank's reply went out by Owl that evening, and Albus Dumbledore's second move arrived by Owl the next morning, and it was, as Gornuk had promised, not gentle. He did not contest the bank's offer to produce Harry before the Wisengamot. He embraced it. That was the first thing Harry understood when Gornuk laid the new parchments on the desk, that the enemy had taken the ground Harry chose and was already building a fort on it. "He has filed a petition," Gornuk said. with the Wisengamot over which he presides for a hearing in 9 days' time. But read the petition, heir, and see what hearing he has asked for, because he has not asked for the one you wanted." Harry read it. It was beautiful. He was learning to use the word for the enemy's work without it being a compliment, the way a surgeon might call a tumor well-formed. The petition did not mention gold. It did not mention an audit or a trust or 67,000 galleons or add one. It mentioned a child. It begged the Wisengamot in tones of grave and fatherly concern to convene and resolve the unhappy matter of the welfare of the minor Harry Potter, who had been removed from his home and was being held by the goblins of Gringotts, who had, the petition said in sorrowing italics, frozen his lawful guardian's access and refused all reasonable contact, and who were, the chief warlock feared, exercising undue influence over a vulnerable and impressionable child for purposes of their own. And it asked the court to do 2 things: to confirm and ratify formally and finally the magical guardianship of Albus Dumbledore over Harry Potter, putting beyond all question the authority that AD1 had only ever claimed, and to order the boy returned at once to the protection of his guardian and his home, for his safety, in the name of the ancient blood magic that the late Lily Potter had died to set upon him. "He's not defending the theft," Harry said slowly. "He's making the hearing about whether I should be allowed to make the accusation at all. If the court ratifies his guardianship before I open my mouth, then I'm not a victim accusing a thief. I'm a stolen ward being recovered from goblins, and anything I say about gold is just what I was coached to say by them." He set the petition down. He's trying to win the room before the room hears the numbers. If he gets the guardianship affirmed and gets me sent home first, the gold never even gets discussed. It becomes a thing the confused boy made up after the goblins got to him. "Yes," said Gornuk. "And he has the chair and he has the law of guardianship plainly on his side as it stands today, because as it stands today, Ad1 has never been overturned and the sealed file has never been opened. And so to the eyes of the Wisengamot he is, this morning, exactly what he claims to be, your lawful guardian asking for his ward back. We know the guardianship is built on a sealed lie. The court does not know it yet, and he is racing to make the court rule before it can learn." The auditor's flat voice did not change. "He has turned your hearing into his hearing in a single night. It was well done. Now we must turn it back." "Then the whole thing comes down to the box," Harry said, "the sealed file. If I can get the court to open the sealed guardianship file, to actually read the grant he says makes him my guardian, then either it says what he claims, in which case I've lost nothing, or it doesn't, in which case the whole petition collapses, because you can't ratify a guardianship whose foundation just turned out to be a forgery," he certified himself. He looked up. "He's asking the court to put his guardianship beyond question, so I ask one question, the only question: open the box." "And he as chief warlock will rule on whether the box may be opened," Gornuk said. "Do you see the shape of it now? Every door in this leads back to a door he holds the key to. He robbed the vault under cover of the law, and he hides behind the treaty, and now he will preside over the court that judges him and rule on the evidence against himself." For the first time something almost like weariness crossed the old goblin's face. "I have built the case, heir. It is clean and it is true. And I do not see, with the chair in his hand, how we make the court hear it before he has the boy on a coach back to Surrey." "Then we don't do it alone," Harry said. "He's powerful, but power makes enemies. A man doesn't get to be the most important person in the country without standing on a lot of people who'd like him to fall, and they can't move against him on their own because he's too strong and too loved, but they'd move in a heartbeat if someone handed them a reason that wasn't theirs. Someone they could hide behind while they did it." The cold, quiet thing in him had turned from the wall to the room, from the obstacle to the board. "I'm the reason. I'm the one accusation no one can call jealousy or politics, because I'm 8 and I'm the boy who lived and he robbed me. Anyone who wants Dumbledore weaker has wanted it for years and never had the cover. I'm the cover." He stood. "Who hates him? Tell me who in that court hates him and can't show it. Those are the people I need to talk to before the hearing, not to ask them to help me, to let them help themselves using me." Gornuk looked at the boy for a long moment, and then he did something Harry had not seen him do. He turned to Bogrod, who stood by the door, and the 2 goblins exchanged a few words in their own tongue, quick and low, and there was in it the cadence of agreement reached. "There are 2, Gornuk said, turning back. "There are more than 2, but there are 2 who matter, and they sit at opposite ends of the court, and you will need both, and they will despise each other, and that is to your advantage, because a boy who is courted by both ends of a court is a boy the middle cannot easily dismiss." He raised one finger. "The first is Lucius Malfoy. Lord of an ancient house, rich, clever, and Dumbledore's enemy in every fiber, because Dumbledore has spent 30 years thwarting everything the Malfoys and their faction desire, and because Lucius was on the losing side of the war Dumbledore won, and has spent the years since buying back his respectability 1 galleon at a time while the old man watches him do it and is never quite fooled. Lucius would give a great deal to wound Dumbledore. He will give more to do it while looking like a concerned peer protecting a child of the old blood. The finger lowered. He is also a snake heir, and he will try to use you for ends of his own that you will not like, and you must go into that room knowing it and use him back and not for one moment mistake him for a friend. Good, Harry said. I don't need a friend, I have friends. He touched the iron on his wrist. I need a sword that wants to be swung. What's the other one? The other, Gornuk said, is the opposite of the first and more dangerous to the enemy for it. Amelia Bones. She heads the Department of Magical Law Enforcement. She is honest, truly honest, which is rarer in that court than gold, and she cannot be bought and does not scheme and has no faction, and she has spent her career being quietly sickened by the things the great are permitted to do because they are great. She does not hate Dumbledore. That is what makes her dangerous. She admires him, as everyone does, but she believes in the law more than she admires any man, and if you put true evidence of a real crime in front of Amelia Bones, she will follow it wherever it goes, even into the chair of the chief warlock, and she will not be able to stop herself because that is what she is. He paused. Malfoy is the sword, Bones is the law. The sword will swing for his own reasons, and you cannot trust where it lands. The law will move slowly, and you can trust it completely. You will want both, the sword to make the court afraid and the law to make the court certain. Win Bones and you have a case. Win Malfoy and you have a fight. Win both and you have a reckoning. Then arrange both, Harry said, here on bank ground where he can't control the room and can't even know it happened. Tell them the heir of the House of Potter requests an audience. Bones first, he thought. No, Malfoy first. If Bones hears I'm meeting with Malfoy, she'll wonder what I am. If Malfoy hears I've met with Bones, he'll know exactly what I am and he'll respect it. Malfoy first. But it was not Malfoy who came first, it was the Ministry. She arrived the next afternoon and Harry was sent for, and Gornuk warned him on the walk up through the tunnels what was waiting, and the warning was the most useful thing anyone had given him that week. Her name is Dolores Umbridge, Gornuk said. She is junior, a senior undersecretary's assistant, nothing, a functionary, and that is precisely why she has been sent, because if a great person came and was refused, it would be an incident, but if a small person comes and is refused, the great people who sent her can pretend they never tried. She has come to assess the welfare of the child, and if she can, to take you. She cannot take you, you are on bank ground, and the accord is iron, and even the minister herself could not remove you from this hall against the bank's will. But she does not need to take you. She needs only to look at you and go back and report that you are pale, or frightened, or strange, or coached, anything she can carry to the hearing to make the court believe the goblins have done you harm. Do you understand? She has not come to win. She has come to gather one ugly sentence about you to read aloud in 9 days. Give her nothing she can use, and she will have made the journey for nothing, and that itself will tell the enemy something about what he is facing. What does she want me to be? Harry asked. Small, Gornuk said, confused, a victim, a child in over his head. Then I'll be the opposite of that, Harry said, and I'll be polite about it so she can't even say I was rude. The room they had put her in was one of the bank's upper receiving chambers, marble cold, a long table, a chair on each side, and Dolores Umbridge sat on the far side of it in a cardigan the color of a boiled sweet, with a smile fixed on her wide pale face, and a quill and a pad of pink parchment laid ready at her elbow, and a cup of tea she had been given and had not touched, because she was not a fool and one did not, perhaps, drink what goblins poured. She was soft and round and entirely pleasant to look at, and Harry read her in the first 3 seconds as he had learned to read his uncle. And what he read was that the softness was a costume, and there was something underneath it that enjoyed hurting things that could not hurt back, and that it had come a long way to enjoy hurting him, and was disappointed already, before he had said a word, because he had walked in straight-backed and dry-eyed and clean. Mr. Potter, she said, and her voice was high and sweet and girlish, a little girl voice in a grown woman's mouth, and it was the most unpleasant thing in the room. Oh, you poor dear, do sit down, I'm Dolores. I've come all this way just to see that you're being looked after. She tilted her head. You must be so frightened down here all alone among these creatures. I'm not frightened, Harry said, and sat and folded his hands on the table and looked at her. And I'm not alone. Thank you for coming, though, it's a long way down. The smile flickered only a fraction, only for an instant, but Harry was counting fractions. She had opened with frightened and alone, and he had taken both away in one sentence and thanked her for her trouble, and now she had to find a new road in, and she had not expected to have to. Of course you're being very brave, Umbridge said, recovering, the sweetness thickening. But bravery isn't the same as safety, is it, dear? A little boy ought to be at home. With his family, where he's loved, the quill twitched toward the pink pad. Your guardian is terribly worried about you. He's a great man, you know, the greatest man in the country. He only wants you home where it's safe. Don't you want to go home, Harry? Which home? Harry said. The quill stopped. I'm sorry, dear. You said home where I'm loved, where it's safe, Harry said, and his voice was perfectly level and perfectly polite, a child answering a question carefully, and that was what made it terrible. I want to make sure I understand which home you mean, the one with my family, so I'll know what you're offering. He looked at her with his green eyes very steady. Do you mean number 4 Privet Drive in Surrey, the house where I lived in the cupboard under the stairs for 7 years, because I can describe it to you if you like, so we're talking about the same place. It's about 1 meter wide, there's a light on a string, there are spiders. My name was on a little plaque my cousin made as a joke. The cupboards, I mean, not a bedroom, I didn't have one of those. Is that the home you mean, the one where I'm loved and safe? The room was very quiet, the quill lay still on the pink parchment. I'm sure, Umbridge said, and the sweetness had gone slightly brittle. That's a great exaggeration. Children do exaggerate so. Your aunt and uncle are respectable people, and they were paid handsomely for your upkeep. She caught it half a second too late. Harry watched her catch it. He let the silence sit for exactly the length it needed to. Paid, Harry said gently. Yes, they were 75 galleons a month for 7 years out of my trust for my upkeep. He had not raised his voice once. I'm glad you know about that. I wasn't sure how much the ministry had been told. Could you write that down, please, that you confirm the payments? It saves me proving them later. He nodded at her quill courteously. On the pink paper is fine. Dolores Umbridge did not write it down. Dolores Umbridge had gone a color that did not flatter the bold sweet cardigan, and her wide pale face had stopped pretending to be soft, and for one unguarded moment the thing underneath the costume looked out through her eyes at the 8-year-old across the table, and what it felt was hatred, pure and startled, the hatred of a small, cruel creature that has reached out to torment something helpless and found, instead, something that counts. You have been coached, she said, and the little girl voice had curdled. You have been coached by these creatures to say these wicked, ungrateful things about a great and good man and the family that took you in out of charity. That is what I shall report, that the goblins have filled a confused child's head with poison, that you are not safe here at all. She gathered her pink parchment with shaking hands. We will have you home by the end of the month, Mr. Potter, where the right people can undo what's been done to you. Do you understand me? The Wizengamot will not listen to a coached little boy over the chief warlock of Britain. You're probably right, Harry said, and stood when she stood, because it was polite. I'm only 8. Nobody listens to 8-year-olds. That's what everyone keeps telling me. He looked at her across the cold marble. You came all the way down here to make me look small, and you're leaving without one sentence you can use, because every true thing I said is worse for him than anything you hoped I'd be. I wasn't pale, I wasn't frightened, I wasn't confused, I just answered your questions, and you can't report that the goblins coached me to tell the truth, because then someone might check whether it's true. A pause. Have a safe trip up. The carts are faster on the way back. Tell him I'm looking forward to the hearing. She left without drinking the tea and without another word, and Gornuk, who had stood silent against the wall through the whole of it, watched the door close behind her and then turned to Harry with an expression the boy had not seen on a goblin's face before. You enjoyed that, Gornuk observed. A little, Harry admitted. It was the first thing he had enjoyed in 7 years that did not have to be paid for later, and the iron on his wrist let him know it without shame. Was it a mistake? Letting her see I'm not what he said. No, Gornuk said slowly. No, I think it was not. I think it may have been the most dangerous thing you have yet done, and I think it was right. She came to gather proof that you are a broken, coachable child. She will go back unable to say it because it is not true, and she could not make it look true even with the whole afternoon to try. And that report, the absence of that report, will reach the enemy tonight, and for the first time he will understand that the thing in his way is not a confused boy the goblins are using. The old auditor inclined his head. It is a boy who used his own envoy to send him a message. He will lie awake on that air. Good, let him. Now, Lucius Malfoy has answered. He will come tomorrow. And he, I promise you, will be a great deal harder to send away empty than that pink, unpleasant woman, because he will not come to take anything. He will come to offer, and the things Lucius Malfoy offers are the most expensive things in Britain. The newspaper came before Malfoy did, and it told Harry more about the war he was in than the Toad Woman had. Bograd brought it at dawn, the early edition of the Daily Prophet, still smelling of ink, and laid it on the desk without a word, and Harry read the front page and understood that Dumbledore's second move had not been the petition at all. The petition was the move everyone could see. This was the move underneath it. WHOLIVEDFEARED in Goblin HANDS. The headline ran in letters 2 inches high, and beneath it, in smaller type that did far more work, Beloved Hero's Ward vanishes. Chief Warlock sick with worry. Sources fear undue influence. There was a photograph of Albus Dumbledore looking nobly stricken, and a great deal of prose about the great man's selfless devotion to the orphan in his care, and a careful, poisonous paragraph near the bottom, sourced always to friends close to the Chief Warlock, never to the man himself, wondering aloud what creatures who valued gold above all might want with the most famous child in Britain, and whether the poor boy even understood what was being done to him. It was, Harry saw, the same trick as the Ministry inquiry, made enormous. It did not accuse, it worried. It did not lie exactly. It asked frightened questions and let the reader supply the ugly answers, and it had reached every breakfast table in magical Britain before the boy at the center of it had finished his porridge. By the time Harry stood up in the Wizengamot, the whole country would already have spent a week being gently, expertly taught to see him as a stolen, addled child in the grip of grasping monsters. He cannot win the courtroom cleanly, Gornuk said, reading over Harry's shoulder. He knows it now. The Umbridge woman will have told him you are no confused infant, so he does not try to win the courtroom. He poisons the country so that whatever the court decides, the people have already decided otherwise, and a verdict the people will not accept is a verdict he can outlive. I have seen wizards fight with wands, ere I have never seen one fight with a newspaper. It is worse. A wand kills one man, this kills the truth before it is spoken. Then we don't let the truth go second, Harry said. He set the paper down. Who wrote it? Gornuk's nailed finger found the byline. One Rita Skeeter. A young correspondent, ambitious, not yet important, which is why she was given the story. The important writers would want it checked. She wants only to be important, and a man like Dumbledore's friends can make a hungry young writer important very cheaply by feeding her a great hero's exclusive sorrow. The goblin paused. She will come, I think. She has the smell of someone who will not be content with one helping. She will want the boy himself for a second piece, the rescued waif weeping his gratitude. It would make her career. Good, Harry said. Let her come, and lay a place for her with tea she won't drink like the last one. The cold, quiet thing in him had already turned the newspaper over and found the lever in it. She's not loyal to him, Gornuk. She doesn't love him. She loves the story. His friends rented her, and a writer you can rent is a writer anyone can rent. You just have to offer her a better story than the one she's got, and I've got a much better story than sad hero misses his ward. He looked up. I've got the most famous child in Britain solves his own robbery from inside a goblin vault. That's the front page that makes her a name for the rest of her life. The other one's a press release. This one's a legend. He almost smiled. She'll take it. She'll have to. The only question is what I let her print, and I'm going to be very, very careful about that, because if I give her the whole case, she ruins the hearing, and if I give her nothing, she stays his. So I give her exactly enough to flip her, and not one fact more. Rita Skeeter came that afternoon, in acid green robes and spectacles studded with false jewels, a crocodile skin bag at her elbow, and a long acid green quill that rose out of it the moment she sat, quivering, eager, its tip already wet, and Harry watched the quill more than the woman, because the quill was the tell. He had read enough to know what a quick quotes quill did, how it took a dull true sentence and curdled it into something that sold, and he understood that everything he said to this woman would be twisted on the way to the paper unless he gave her sentences too sharp and too good to be worth twisting. Mr. Potter, her smile was very white and very wide. You poor, brave little lamb, Rita Skeeter, Daily Prophet. I'm here to let you tell your side, your very own words, just as you feel them, so all of Britain can understand what these circumstances have been like for a frightened boy so far from home. The green quill scratched, already writing before he had said anything at all. Now, tell me, are you very afraid? Harry looked at the quill. It had written, he could see, a phrase about a trembling waif. Stop the quill, Harry said pleasantly, or I won't say a single word and you'll go back with nothing, and your competitors will get the biggest story of the decade tomorrow morning instead of you. Your choice, but you should choose fast because I'm only making this offer for the next 10 seconds. The white smile flickered. The quill hesitated. Rita Skeeter, who had come to harvest a weeping lamb, looked at the green-eyed boy across the table and felt, as Umbridge had felt, the floor shift under a script that was not going to run. The biggest story of the decade, she repeated slowly. The quill, at a flick of her finger, lay down. Go on, you have my attention, lamb. It's an expensive thing to have. You wrote this morning that I'm a confused child in the hands of monsters, Harry said. I'm going to tell you something off the record first so you understand what you're holding, and then I'll tell you exactly what you're allowed to print. The off-the-record part is this. Every word in your story came from people Dumbledore's friends fed it to, and not one of those people has spoken to me. And your story is going to look very, very stupid in 8 days, because in 8 days I'm going to stand up in the Wisengamot and prove, with the bank's own certified numbers, that Albus Dumbledore stole 67,000 galleons from my trust over 7 years. He let her face do what it did. It did a great deal. You're holding the front page that called the victim of the largest theft in living memory a confused waif the week before he proved it. That's the story you've got right now, Miss Skeeter, whether you wanted it or not. The question is whether you want the other one. The crocodile bag was very still. Rita Skeeter had gone pale under her powder. You can't print the theft, Harry went on before she could speak. I won't let you, and here's why you'll agree. If you print the case before the hearing, you tip him off to exactly what we have. He changes his defense, and the story dies, and worse, you become the writer who blew it instead of the writer who broke it. So that part waits 8 days. But I'll give you something to print now today that's true, and that's yours alone, and that quietly turns your sad hero story into the first chapter of the biggest scandal of the age, so that when the hearing comes, you're not the writer who got it wrong, you're the writer who saw it coming. He folded his hands. You print this in your own words, true to the last syllable, that you have met the boy in person at his own request, that he is not missing, not frightened, not confused, but well and composed and articulate beyond his years. That he is at Gringotts of his own accord, that the goblins have treated him with courtesy, and that he has asked the Daily Prophet to tell the public one thing only, that he looks forward to addressing the Wisengamot himself in 8 days and asks the country to wait and listen before it decides what he is. He paused. That's all true. You can stand behind every word, and it does three things, Miss Skeeter, count them. It untells this morning's story without you having to admit you were wrong. It makes the whole country wait 8 days with held breath for whatever I'm going to say, and it puts your name on the boy who's about to topple a legend 8 days before anyone else even knows there's a legend to topple. His friends rented you for a sad paragraph. I'm handing you a career. Which do you want? For a long moment Rita Skeeter looked at the 8-year-old, and the hunger in her face fought the fear and won, as Harry had known it would, because she was exactly what Gornuk had said. She was not loyal, only hungry, and a hungry creature can always be moved to a richer table. You devious little, she began, and then she laughed, a sharp, delighted sound, and snapped the crocodile bag open and drew out an ordinary quill, the real kind, the kind that only wrote what she told it to. Oh, you are a story. You are the best story I have ever sat across a table from, and I have interviewed murderers. She uncapped the ink. Off the record, lamb between professionals, did he really? 67,000. To the coin, Harry said. 8 days, print the true part now. I'll see you in the high room. And the next morning the Daily Prophet ran a second front page, by the same young correspondent, headlined Boy WHO Lived SBEAKS. Wait and listen, and it unsaid every poison of the day before without retracting a word of it, and it told a breathless country that the famous orphan was safe and sharp, and bound for the Wisengamot with something to say. And all across Britain a week of held breath began, and in a round office in the north an old man read it over his breakfast and understood that the well he had so carefully poisoned had been, overnight, quietly emptied and refilled by the very child he had described as too confused to fill a teacup. He set the paper down. He did not write a list this time. He had begun at last to run out of moves that worked, and a part of him, the part that had reached for the wax for 7 years, knew it. Lucius Malfoy came the next day dressed like a man who had never once in his life been cold, in robes of charcoal and silver with a cane of black wood topped in carved snake's head, and he did not sit when he was shown into the receiving chamber. He stood and looked at the boy already seated at the table, and let a slow smile arrange itself on his pale, handsome face, and Harry understood at once that the standing and the smile were the opening move of a game Lucius had been playing since before Harry was born and was very good at, and that the only way to play it was to refuse to play it. Herr Potter, Lucius said. His voice was smooth and unhurried, a voice accustomed to rooms going quiet when it spoke. I confess I did not believe the message. A request for audience from the House of Potter lodged through Gringotts. I had heard the most extraordinary rumors, that the boy had vanished, that the goblins had him, that poor Dumbledore was beside himself. The smile deepened. And here you are, not vanished at all, looking remarkably composed for a kidnapped child. Sit down, Lord Malfoy, Harry said. You came a long way, and you're going to want to be comfortable, because I'm going to make you an offer, and you're going to want to think carefully before you take it. The smile did not move, but something behind the gray eyes did, a recalibration, quick and cold, a man discovering that the board was not laid out as he had expected. Lucius Malfoy sat. You intrigued me, he said. I came, I will be honest, expecting to find a frightened child I might comfort, and in comforting, befriend, and in befriending, guide, for these are dark waters for a boy alone, and a boy of the old blood should not be without a friend among his own kind. The cane laid itself across his knees. But you do not seem to want comforting. No, Harry said, I know what you came for. You came because you heard Dumbledore was in trouble, and you've wanted Dumbledore in trouble for years, and you've never been able to do anything about it because he's too strong and too loved, and you're, forgive me, too disliked. Anything you do against him looks like exactly what it is, a defeated man clawing at the one who beat him. He watched Lucius take it, watched the gray eyes flatten, and did not soften it, because the iron on his wrist did not let him pretend, and because Lucius would respect the truth more than the flattery. But you can't be seen clawing. So you came down here to find out whether the rumors were real, because if they were, if there's a true thing against Dumbledore, something that isn't politics, something nobody could call sour grapes, then you wouldn't have to claw at all. You could just stand next to it. Be the noble lord who protected a wronged child of the old blood from a corrupt old man, and get everything you've wanted and look good doing it. Harry folded his hands. That's why you're here. I just saved us an hour. Now I'll tell you whether the true thing is real. There was a silence. Lucius Malfoy looked at the 8-year-old across the marble table for a long moment, and then he laughed, a short, surprised, genuine sound quickly mastered. Salazar's blood, he said softly. You are not what he told the world you are, the boy who lived, the sainted orphan. He has built a little marble statue and called it Harry Potter, and the statue is sweet and grateful and biddable, and here is the original, and the original is, he searched for it, a knife, how delightful, how very inconvenient for Albus. He leaned back. Very well, you have my attention, which is more than most men purchase in a lifetime. Tell me the true thing. So Harry told him. Not all of it, he had decided in advance exactly how much, and he gave Lucius the gold and only the gold, the 67,000, the 4 streams, add 1, the sealed self-certified guardianship, the Phoenix endowment at the end of the chain. He did not give him the will. He did not give him Sirius Black or Andromeda Tonks or the cupboard, those were not Lucius's to use. He gave him the theft, clean and provable, and he watched the gray eyes light with something that was very close to joy. He robbed the Potter vaults, Lucius murmured when it was done, savoring each word like a vintage. 67,000 galleons from the trust of the boy who lived under a guardianship he sealed himself, and the goblins have it to the coin. He was quiet for a moment, and Harry could see the calculations running behind his face, fast and intricate. Do you understand what this is, boy? This is not a scandal. A scandal he would survive. He has survived scandals. This is theft proven from a child by the chief warlock, and not just any child, the one child whose wronging the whole country will feel in its stomach. This could end him, not the chair, the man, the myth. The gray eyes came back to Harry sharp now. And you are offering it to me. Why, you could take it to a dozen others. Why, Lucius Malfoy? Because you want it most and you'll fight hardest, Harry said. And because you're honest about being a snake, which means I always know which way you'll strike. Here's the offer. He laid it out plainly, the deal he had built in the night. At the hearing, you moved to open the sealed guardianship file. You, not me, not the goblins, a lord of an ancient house, gravely concerned that a child of the old blood has been placed under a guardianship that has never been examined, demanding in the name of all the great families that the court see the document with its own eyes before it ratifies anything. You make the speech, you take the credit. You're the protector of the old blood standing up to the corrupt old man. That's yours, I'm giving it to you. And in return, you open the box, Harry said. That's all. You don't speak for me. You don't represent me. You don't get a say in what happens to me afterward, and you don't get to call yourself my friend or my patron or my anything because I'm nobody's symbol and I won't be yours. You get the wound to Dumbledore and the credit for landing it. I get the box open. After that we're done, and we both walk away having gotten exactly what we came for, and neither of us owes the other a thing. Harry met his eyes. You're going to want more. You're going to try in the next minute to make it about an alliance, about the future, about how a boy like me needs a house like yours behind him. Don't. The deal is the box. It's a good deal. It costs you one speech you'd love to give anyway, and it hands you the chance to help destroy the man who stood on your neck for 30 years. Take it as it is, or I'll offer the speech to someone else, and you'll have to watch another man become the hero who toppled Dumbledore. Lucius Malfoy was silent for a long moment. The snake's head cane turned slowly under his pale fingers. You have thought about this a great deal, he said at last. I've had 11 days and nothing else to do. And you do not trust me an inch. Not an inch, Harry agreed. That's why it's a good deal. It only works if neither of us has to trust the other. You'll move to open the box because opening the box is what you want anyway. I don't need your loyalty, I just need your appetite, and you've got plenty of that. He almost smiled. I'd shake on it, but I think we both know that wouldn't mean anything, so let's not pretend. You'll do it because it's the most fun you've had in years. That's better than a handshake. And Lucius Malfoy, lord of an ancient and noble house, looked at the 8-year-old in the bruise-colored jumper with a band of black iron on his wrist, and inclined his silver head and said, I will move to open the box, Herr Potter. It will be, as you say, a great pleasure. He rose and paused at the door, and the smile returned, edged now with something that was almost respect. A word free of charge, because I find I have enjoyed this more than I expected to. You are right that I am a snake, but there are larger snakes than I in that court, and not all of them have declared themselves, and the man you are hunting did not become what he is by being merely good. Watch the ground behind you as closely as the ground ahead. He will not fight you where you are looking. He bowed, a precise mocking fraction, until the hearing. Amelia Bones came on the 7th day, and she was everything Lucius was not. She did not smile, and she did not flatter, and she did not stand to play a game. She sat down at once, square and gray-haired, a monocle in one eye and a jaw like a closing door, and she set a plain leather case on the table and folded her hands on top of it and looked at Harry with the flat, assessing patience of a woman who had spent 30 years deciding whether people were lying. Herr Potter, she said, I am told you have evidence of a crime. I am also told a great many other things, most of which I disbelieve on principle until I have seen the documents. I run the Department of Magical Law Enforcement. I did not come here to comfort you or to use you. I came because if there is a true crime, it is my job to know of it, and the size of the man it touches makes no difference to that job, though it will make a great deal of difference to how lonely the job becomes. She tapped the case. So, no speeches. Show me what you have and let me decide for myself. So Harry showed her, and this time he showed her everything, the gold and the will both, because Amelia Bones was the law and the law needed all of it, and he had decided, the moment Gornuk described her, that she was the one person in the whole of it he would not manage, because she could not be managed and would know if he tried. He laid the dossier in front of her and let the goblins answer her questions, and she asked good questions, hard ones, the questions of someone trying to break the case rather than believe it, and the case did not break because it was true, and Harry watched the honest gray face go slowly still and then slowly grim as the weight of it settled. She was quiet for a long time after Gornuk read the guardianship clause of the will. Sirius Black, she said at last, and there was something raw under the flatness now. Named first guardian, sent to Azkaban without trial the week the will was sealed. She took the monocle from her eye and polished it slowly. I was in the department that week. I remember the days after. I remember the haste and the fear, and how glad everyone was to have someone to hang it on, and how no one, myself among them, stood up and asked why a man was being sent to the Dementors without so much as a hearing. She replaced the monocle. I have wondered about that week for 7 years and told myself there was a war on and choices had to be made fast. And now a goblin reads me a will that says the man we never tried was named to raise this boy, and the same week, the same powers, the same haste, sealed the will and certified the guardianship and sent the witness to prison. Her jaw worked once. I am not a woman who believes in coincidence stacked that neatly. I believe in evidence. And the evidence in front of me says that a great many convenient things happened in a single week, all of them benefiting one man, and that no one was ever permitted to look. I'm not asking you to decide that he's guilty, Harry said. I'm asking you to make sure the court actually looks, that's all. He's going to preside over his own hearing. He's going to rule on whether the box gets opened. That can't be allowed. You're the law. You can stand up and say the chief warlock cannot sit in judgment of a matter to which he is a party, that he must recuse, that another must take the chair, that the sealed files must be opened by order of the court and not by his leave. You can make it a real hearing instead of a performance he controls. He looked at her steadily. I have a sword already. Lucius Malfoy will swing it. What I don't have is a guarantee that the swing lands somewhere fair instead of somewhere he's arranged. That's you. You're not my sword, you're the thing that makes sure the fight is honest. Will you do that? Not for me, for the part of you that's wondered about that week for 7 years. Amelia Bones looked at him for a long, long moment. You are 8 years old, she said. Everyone keeps telling me that. And you have just asked me correctly to do precisely the one thing the law requires, and everyone in that court will be too frightened to demand. She closed the leather case and stood. I do not like being used, Herr Potter, and I am aware that I am being used by you and by your goblins and very probably by Lucius Malfoy, whom I would not trust to tell me the time. But the law does not care who points it at a crime. It only cares whether the crime is real. She picked up the case. It is real. I have seen enough to know it is real. So I will do my job, which happens this once to be the thing you want. I will demand the recusal, and I will demand the seals broken by order of the full court, and I will see to it that whatever is in those boxes is read aloud where every member must hear it. After that, the evidence speaks, and no one, not you, not Malfoy, not Albus Dumbledore himself, will be permitted to put a thumb on the scale. Are we understood? Understood, Harry said. Thank you. Do not thank me, said Amelia Bones. I am not doing it for you. But she paused at the door, the same place Lucius had paused, and looked back at the small, straight figure at the table, and something in the grim face eased by a fraction. Though I will say this, whatever was done to you, and I begin to think a great deal was done to you, you have come out of it pointed in the right direction, which is more than most do. Mind you stay pointed there. It would be a waste of a remarkable boy to become, in the end, only another person who learned how to use people. And she left, and Harry sat with that, because it was the truest and least comfortable thing anyone had said to him in 11 days, and the iron on his wrist would not let him pretend she was wrong. Far to the north, in a stone-walled office hung with tartan, Minerva McGonagall stood in front of the headmaster's desk with her arms folded and her mouth a thin line, and refused for the 3rd time to leave. I am not asking as your deputy, Albus, she said. I am asking as the woman who sat on a garden wall as a cat for a full day 7 years ago and watched those people, and told you to your face they were the worst sort of muggles, and begged you not to leave that child with them. And you told me it was for the best. You told me he would be safe. And now I hear the boy is not at Privet Drive at all, that he is at Gringotts, that there is a petition, that there are goblins involved and lawyers and the Bones woman asking questions. And when I asked Dolores Umbridge, who came back from the bank this morning looking as though she had swallowed a wasp, she would tell me nothing except that the child had been poisoned against you. Her sharp eyes did not leave his face. So I am asking you plainly, and I want a plain answer, because in 30 years you have never once lied to me, and I find I need to hear you not lie to me now. What did you do with that boy's money, Albus? And Albus Dumbledore, seated behind his desk among the whirring silver instruments, with the phoenix watching from its perch and the long northern light falling gold across the papers of 100 good works, looked up at his oldest colleague with his kind blue eyes, and did not answer the question, and said instead, gently, Minerva, sit down. There is a great deal you do not understand, and very little time, and I am going to have to ask you to trust me a little longer, as you have always trusted me, for the boy's sake, and for all our sakes, because there are storms coming that the ledgers cannot see. And Minerva McGonagall, who had trusted him for 30 years, looked at the man who had not answered her question, and for the first time in all those years she did not sit down. In the bank far below, Harry laid the day's work on his desk beside the photograph of the 3 laughing people, and looked at the two ends of the court he had bought with the truth and an offer each, the sword and the law, the snake and the honest woman, and the hearing was 2 days away now, and the lines were drawn as cleanly as any ledger, and the cold quiet thing in him went very still and very ready. 2 days, he said to Gornuk. Then we open the box. 2 days, Gornuk agreed. And then ere you will stand in a high room in front of the whole of magical Britain and the man who robbed you, and you will learn whether the light is truly the field you believe it to be, or whether, in the end, the legend is larger than the law. The old goblin's flat eyes held his. I hope you are right. I have staked the nation on your being right. Sleep if you can. The day after tomorrow, you go up into the sun for the first time in your life to do the one thing no one in that room believes an 8-year-old can do. A pause. Make them count you, Harry Potter. Make them all count you. Chapter 5 and Chapter 6. Law against the legend. Harry went up into the sun for the first time in his life on the morning of the hearing, and the sun was not what he had expected. He had spent 11 days underground, and he had imagined, vaguely, that coming up would feel like escape. It did not. The lift opened onto the marble hall, and the great bronze doors stood open beyond it, and through them came a wedge of ordinary London daylight, grey and bright and full of noise. And Harry stood in it for a moment and felt how exposed it was, how wide, how full of eyes, and understood that the dark below had become, in 11 days, the place where he was safe, and that he was walking out of safety on purpose, into the open, because the open was the only field where the thing could be won. He had chosen the light, now he had to stand in it. Gornuk walked at his left hand and Scarrock at his right, both in the formal black and gold of the bank's High Council, and behind them came a clerk bearing the dossier in an iron case, and Bogrod, who was not required and had come anyway, and would not be talked out of it. They did not go by the public way. A bank carriage took them through London to the ministry's visitors' entrance, and down into the great underground atrium with its floor of polished wood and its fountain of golden statues. And Harry looked at the statue of the noble wizard with the grateful goblin gazing up adoringly at his knee, and said nothing, and Scarrock looked at it too and said something short in his own tongue that did not sound kind. They were expected, they were not welcomed. And they had not gone 20 paces across the great floor when a figure detached itself from the crowd and came toward them, alone, unhurried, in robes of deep midnight blue, and the whole atrium seemed to bend toward him as he passed without his asking it to. Heads turning, conversations dropping, a wake of attention trailing the long white beard and the half-moon glasses, and Harry, who had never seen him, knew him at once. Because there was only one man alive who could walk across a room and make the room rearrange itself around him. Albus Dumbledore stopped a courteous distance away and looked down at the boy he had not seen since he was a baby on a doorstep, and his face, when Harry looked up into it, was full of nothing but sorrow and gentleness and a vast, patient, grandfatherly kindness. And Harry understood in that first instant exactly how he had gotten away with all of it for 7 years, because the face was not a mask. The kindness was real, that was the terrible thing. The man was not pretending. Harry, Dumbledore said softly, and there was a catch in the famous voice, real or perfectly made. Harry could not tell and decided it did not matter. My dear boy, I have looked for you for 11 days and feared the worst, and here you are, and you are taller than I imagined, and well, and so very like your father. The blue eyes shone. Will you give an old man a few minutes before all of this begins, in private, not as adversaries? There's a small chamber here off the atrium. I think there are things you should hear from me directly before other people put their words in both our mouths. Will you come? Yes, Harry said. Gornuk's hand twitched, the smallest motion of objection, and Harry looked at him once, and the goblin subsided, because the iron between them meant Gornuk knew Harry was not walking into this blind, and Harry knew Gornuk would be on the other side of the door, and because some conversations a person has to have alone, and both of them understood that this was one. Harry followed the old man into the small chamber, and the door closed, and they were alone, the most powerful wizard in the world and the boy whose fortune he had spent, and Dumbledore gestured to a chair, and Harry did not take it, and Dumbledore, after a moment, did not take his either, and they stood. I am not going to insult you by pretending, Dumbledore said quietly, and that too was a move, and a good one, disarming the boy by surrendering the first weapon. You are clearly not a child who would believe it, and I find I do not wish to try. Yes, I took gold from your trust, a great deal of it. I have spent the last 11 days since the bank's notice reached me knowing that this hour would come, and I have decided that when it did I would tell you the truth, because you have earned the truth, and because I hope that when you have heard the whole of it you may understand what the ledgers cannot show. He folded his hands. Will you let me tell it? All of it, and then you will do whatever you judge right, and I will not stop you, but let me first tell you why. Tell me, Harry said. The war did not end the night your parents died. The old voice was very low and very steady. The world believes it did. The world is wrong, and I am one of perhaps 3 people alive who knows how wrong, and I have spent 7 years preparing for the day the world learns it too. Voldemort, forgive me, the name your world fears, was not destroyed that night. He was unmade, scattered, reduced, but not ended. I have reason, evidence I cannot share even now, to believe he endures, and that he will return, and that when he returns it will fall to you, Harry, to you specifically, for reasons bound into the very scar you carry, to be the one who stands against him. You are not an ordinary boy, you never were. You are the hinge on which the next war turns, and I have known it since the night I left you on that doorstep, and everything I have done since has been bent to one end, that when the storm breaks, you and the world you must save will both be ready to survive it. He let it breathe. He was very good. Harry said nothing and let him continue because he wanted the whole of it, every stone of the argument, before he answered. The gold, Dumbledore said, your gold. I will tell you what it bought, and I will tell you plainly, because it is the part I am least ashamed of. It bought watchers, men and women placed across Britain to give us warning the day the Death Eaters stirred. It bought refuge houses where the hunted could hide, that exist this moment ready, because I did not wait for the war to find us unprepared as it did the first time. It bought loyalty and information and the slow, patient infrastructure of a resistance that must be built in peacetime or it will not exist in war, and that cannot be funded openly, because to fund it openly is to announce to our enemies that we expect them to return. Every galleon I took from your trust, Harry, I spent on the survival of your world, the world you will one day be asked to save. Not one coin enriched me. You have seen the books. You know this is true. I did not steal from you. I invested you in the only war that will ever matter, on the only side that can win it, for the only future in which you and everyone you might ever come to love are not slaughtered as your parents were. And the cupboard, Harry said, the Dursleys, Mrs. Figg watching me, tell me how that bought the survival of my world. Something crossed the kind old face, not guilt, Harry noted, but grief, which was different and more dangerous. That, Dumbledore said, is the part I am ashamed of, and I will not pretend otherwise. Your mother's sacrifice left a protection in her blood, and her sister shares that blood, and so long as you could call your aunt's house home, you were shielded by a magic older and stronger than any ward I could build, a protection no Death Eater, no follower of Voldemort could breach. While you lived under Petunia's roof, the most famous child in Britain was, paradoxically, the safest, because the one place his enemies would never think to look for the boy who lived was a perfectly ordinary Muggle house in Surrey, behind a wall of his mother's love. The blue eyes were wet now. I did not know it was a cupboard, Harry, I swear that to you. I knew the home was cold, I knew it was not love. I told myself that cold and safe was better than warm and dead, and that obscurity, even unkind obscurity, was a fortress, and that a boy raised in humility would be a better man than a boy raised drowning in the worship of a world that calls him a hero for surviving the murder of his parents. I told myself a great many things, some of them were even true. He spread his hands. I am not asking you to forgive the cupboard. I'm asking you to understand that every choice I made, even the cruel ones, even the wrong ones, was made by a man trying to keep alive a child he could not afford to lose, in a war that child does not yet remember, against an enemy that child has not yet met. I did it for you, Harry, I did all of it for you, and for everyone the war will come for. And I am sorry, I am more sorry than you will ever believe, that doing it cost you a childhood I had no right to spend. The chamber was silent. It was, Harry thought, the best argument he would ever hear in his life. It was complete. It accounted for everything. It conceded just enough to seem honest and reframed all the rest as tragic necessity, and it was delivered by a man whose grief was genuine and whose belief was total. And Harry understood that if he had been any other 8-year-old in the world it would have worked, that the gentleness and the certainty and the great sad weight of the man would have folded a normal child up like a paper and sent him home grateful. And he understood something else, standing in the small chamber looking up at the wet blue eyes, that the old man half believed it would work even now. That he had come in here certain that if he could only explain, the boy would understand, because everyone always understood in the end, because he was Albus Dumbledore and he was right. Can I tell you what I heard? Harry said. Please. I heard a man who's sure, Harry said. I heard the most sure man I've ever met. And I heard every single thing I expected to hear, because Scarrock told me what you'd say 11 days ago, almost word for word, that you'd be kind and certain and so sorry, and that you'd explain it was all for me and for the war and for the greater good, and that you'd believe every word, and that half the room would believe it too. His voice was very level and very cold, and it did not waver. He was right, so let me answer it the way I've been getting ready to answer it for 11 days. Not the gold's just the part with a number on it, let me answer the rest. Dumbledore inclined his head gravely, and Harry saw with a flat, clear satisfaction. The first flicker of uncertainty crossed the old face, because the boy was not crumbling and the script had not run, and Albus Dumbledore was not. It was slowly occurring to him in control of this room. You said you invested me, Harry said. That's the whole of it, right there in one word. You didn't take care of me. You invested me. You looked at a baby on a doorstep and you saw an asset, a weapon for a war, a hinge for the future, and you made decisions about that asset the way a man manages a portfolio. Where to store it, how to keep it cheap, how to keep its value from being spoiled by too much comfort. And you spent its inheritance maintaining the rest of your holdings, because to you the asset and the gold were the same kind of thing, resources to be allocated by you for the greater good, which is the good as decided by you. The cold, quiet thing in him was perfectly still and perfectly clear. You keep saying you did it for me. You didn't. You did it for the war and the world and the future, for the cause. I was just the most valuable thing the cause owned. And a man doesn't ask permission of his assets. He doesn't explain himself to his gold. That's why you never told me, not the money, not the will, not who I was, not any of it. You don't brief a sword, you just keep it sharp and hidden until you need it. Harry, I'm not finished. He did not raise his voice. He did not have to. Here's the part that proves it. You said every coin went to a good cause, and you said it like the goodness of the cause makes it not theft, but you sealed it. You ran my gold through 3 hidden vaults and into a charity in a false name and a sealed instruction the bank swore not to read. You sealed the will so no one would know my parents forbade the cupboard. You sealed the guardianship file so no one could check whether you had any right to me at all. You hid every single piece of it. He took one step closer, small and straight and absolutely without fear. And that's how I know you knew. A man who truly believes he's doing right does it in the open. He's proud of it. He puts his name on it where everyone can see, because the goodness is the whole point. You didn't. You did all of it in the dark, behind seals only you could open, in a charity that doesn't bear your name. You hid it, and you don't hide what you're proud of. You hide what you know is wrong. Every seal you set is a confession. You can tell yourself it was for the greater good every hour of every day for the rest of your life, but somewhere underneath all that certainty, a part of you knew exactly what it was, because that part of you is the one that reached for the wax. Albus Dumbledore stood very still, and the wet blue eyes had stopped shining, and what was in his face now was not grief and was not anger, but something Harry had not expected and would remember. A kind of weariness, ancient and bottomless, the weariness of a man who has spent 100 years being the cleverest person in every room and has just been told a true thing by a child, and cannot for once find the answer that makes it untrue. You came in here, Harry said, to make it go away. You're going to offer me the gold back, all of it, and more, quietly today if I'll let the matter rest. You're going to tell me it's better for everyone, less painful, that a public reckoning helps no one and wounds the cause, and that I'm too young to understand what I'd be tearing down. And the answer is no. The iron lay cold on his wrist. I don't want the gold back quietly. I never wanted the gold. I want it counted. I want every true thing you hid said out loud in that room where everyone has to hear it, because the wrong you did me wasn't the taking, it was the dark. You did it all where it didn't count on purpose, so you'd never have to answer for it. I'm going to make it count. That's the whole of what I want, and it's the one thing you can't give me by giving me back the gold, because you can't unhide it. You can only stand up in the light and let it be seen. He looked up at the old man, and his green eyes were very steady. You should go and sit down, headmaster. They're waiting, and you're not presiding today. I made sure of that, too. For a long moment Albus Dumbledore looked down at Harry Potter, and neither of them spoke, and then the old man drew a breath that seemed to come from somewhere very deep and very tired, and he inclined his head, not in surrender, Harry saw, never that, but in recognition, the grave acknowledgement of one player to another across a board that had not, after all, gone as he had planned. Your mother, Dumbledore said quietly, was the cleverest witch of her age, and your father feared nothing on this earth, and I see now that I made the most dangerous mistake a man in my position can make. I underestimated the child of 2 people I knew better than that. He moved to the door and paused, his hand on it, an old man suddenly looking every one of his years. I did love your world enough to damn myself for it, Harry. That much is true, whatever you believe of the rest. I only hope, when the storm I have spent your gold preparing for finally breaks upon you, and it will, that you will have learned by then, the thing I am only now learning from you, that there is a difference between being right and being good, and that the seal a man sets in the dark is the exact measure of the distance between them. He opened the door. Come, let us go and let it count. And they went out together into the light of the great atrium, the old man and the boy, side by side and on opposite sides of everything, toward the high room where the whole of magical Britain was waiting to learn that its greatest legend had robbed its most famous child, and that the child had counted every coin. The attack came in the corridor outside the courtroom, and it came, as Lucius Malfoy had promised it would, from the ground Harry was not watching. Dumbledore had peeled away toward the members' entrance, and the great atrium had narrowed to a long stone passage hung with the portraits of dead ministers, and the crowd had thinned to the few with business in the High Court, and it was there, with the courtroom doors 20 paces ahead and the worst of the danger seemingly behind him, that a man stepped out from an alcove between 2 portraits with his wand already up and his face wet with tears. I won't let you, the man said. He was young, ordinary, shaking, a clerk's robes and a clerk's soft hands, and the wand in those hands did not shake at all, which was the only frightening thing about him. He saved us. He saved all of us. He's the only thing standing between us and the dark, and you're going to tear him down over money, you ungrateful little, I won't let you. Someone has to stop you. Someone has to protect him. There was no time to answer, and Harry did not try. He had spent his whole life in the 4 seconds between a shout and a fist, and the cold, quiet thing in him was already counting. The man's arm coming level, the word forming on his lips, the 20 paces to the door, the goblins half a step behind, and Harry did the only thing the count allowed, which was to drop. He went down hard as he had gone down 100 times in the alley behind the garages, folding sideways and back, and the curse went over him close enough that he felt his hair lift. A bolt of sick yellow light that struck the portrait behind where his chest had been and blew the painted minister into a spray of canvas and screaming. The corridor cracked into chaos. Someone shrieked. The man's wand swung down to follow Harry to the floor, the tears still streaming, the certainty still total, and Bograd hit him. Harry would not have believed the speed of it if he had not been lying at the height to see it. The junior teller, who had no formal place in the day and had come anyway, crossed the gap between them in a single low blur and drove his shoulder into the man's knees, and the second curse went wild into the ceiling. And then Scarrock's iron stick came down across the man's wand wrist with a sound like a snapping branch, and the wand spun away across the flagstones, and Gornuk had not moved at all, Harry saw, except to step in front of the place where Harry was rising. So that the old master auditor stood between the boy and the whole of the corridor, with his nailed hands open at his sides, and an expression on his gray face that emptied the passage of every onlooker who saw it. It was over in the time it takes to fall down and stand up. The young man was on the floor, his wrist already swelling, sobbing now in earnest, pinned under Bograd's knee in the flat black iron of Scarrock's stick, and 3 Aurors were pounding up the corridor far too late, and Harry got to his feet and brushed the canvas dust off his jumper and looked down at the man who had tried to kill him for love of a legend. "Don't hurt him any more than you have to," Harry said to the goblins, and his voice was perfectly level, and the levelness of it was what made the Aurors slow as they arrived. "He's not the danger, he's just the proof of it. He tried to murder you," Scarrock said, and there was a cold fury in the old goblin's voice that had not been there even in the deepest of the audit. "In a quarter of the ministry in front of the law itself. The iron does not forgive that, whatever you feel. He has shed iron friend blood, or sought to. He didn't though," Harry said. "He missed, and he missed because Bograd is faster than grief." He crouched down slowly until he was level with the weeping man's eyes, and the corridor went very quiet to watch an 8-year-old look at the wizard who had just tried to kill him. "What's your name?" The man flinched as if the question were the curse. "Edgar," he managed. "Edgar Plum. I work in the flu office. He saved my mother in the war. The order pulled her out of a house the Death Eaters had marked. She'd be dead. He saved her, and you're the certainty cracked, and what was under it was just fear, ordinary human fear, and Harry recognized it because he had lived next to its cousin for 7 years. You're going to destroy him, the only good man, and no one's stopping you, so I had to." "He did save your mother," Harry said. "That part's true. The order did pull people out of marked houses. Some of what he built with my money saved real people, and your mother might be one of them, and I'm not going to stand here and tell you she isn't, because she is, and you love him for it, and you should." He stayed crouched level, unhurried, while the Aurors and the goblins and the gathering crowd held their breath. "But listen to me, Edgar, because you're about to throw your whole life away in a ministry corridor, and someone should say this to you first. He saved your mother in the dark. He never told you he paid for it by robbing a child. He let you love him for the saving, and he hid the price so that you'd be standing here 7 years later ready to kill an 8-year-old to protect a secret you don't even know you're protecting. That's what the dark does. It makes good people into weapons by keeping them from the whole truth. He didn't make you a murderer because he's evil. He made you a murderer because he decided, as he decided everything, that you didn't need to know the rest." Harry stood. "I'm doing all of this in the light precisely so that no one ever has to find out 8 years too late that they killed for me without knowing what I really was. You almost did that for him today. Go home to your mother. Be glad you missed. Today, when you hear what he actually did, ask yourself whether the man worth dying for would have let you do it without knowing." He turned to the Aurors. "I won't press it. He's a victim too. He just doesn't know it yet. Hold him until after the hearing so he can't try again, then let him go to his mother. And write it down, all of it, exactly as it happened, with my name confirming it, because today a man tried to murder me in a ministry corridor to keep a great man's secret, and that is itself a fact that belongs in the light, and I will not have it sealed." His green eyes swept the crowd. "Nothing about this gets sealed. Nothing. Are we clear?" The senior Auror, a hard-faced woman who had clearly expected to be managing a frightened child, and was managing instead a crime scene and a boy giving lawful orders that were technically exactly correct, looked at him for a moment and then said, "Clear, Herr Potter," and meant it. Gornuk fell in at Harry's left as they went the last 20 paces to the courtroom doors, and the old auditor's voice was very low. "You were nearly killed," Gornuk said, "and you used it. Inside a minute, while your hair still smelled of the curse, you turned your own assassin into a sermon on the man you are hunting in front of 40 witnesses minutes before the hearing. I have served the Horde 200 years, and I do not think I have your nerve, and I am not certain I would want it." He paused. "Are you hurt?" "No," Harry said. His hands were not shaking. He noticed that they were not shaking, and the cold, quiet thing in him noted it too, and went on counting. "He told me his mother was saved. That's the part I'm keeping. Some of it was real mercy, Gornuk. I have to remember that, or I become the thing I'm fighting, somebody so sure he's right that he stops seeing the people in the way." He looked at the great doors ahead and the muffled weight of a waiting nation behind them. Lucius warned me, watch the ground behind you, he'll come at you where you're not looking. A thin breath. I'll have to thank the snake for that, right after I'm done using him. And the courtroom doors swung open before them, and the held breath of magical Britain rolled out into the corridor like a tide, and Harry Potter, 8 years old, with canvas dust on his jumper and a band of black iron on his wrist and a photograph of 3 laughing people against his chest, stepped through them into the hardest light there was. The courtroom of the Wisengamot was a deep stone amphitheater, tier on tier of plum-colored robes rising into shadow, and at the bottom of it, where the light fell hardest, a single chair waited for the accused and a high bench waited for the chief warlock. And Harry walked in at the side of the man who was meant to sit at that bench and watched the whole vast room understand, in a rolling wave of indrawn breath, that the boy from the petition was real and small and entirely unafraid. He did not take the accused's chair. He stood beside it, with Gornuk and Scarrock behind him in the bank's black and gold, and the iron case of the dossier between them, and he found, scanning the tiers, the faces he had been told to find Lucius Malfoy in the seats of the ancient houses, languid and bright-eyed, Amelia Bones square and grim at the head of the law enforcement benches, an old man with a white mustache and a face like carved oak who could only be Tiberius Ogden. And near the front, a small toad-like woman in a boiled sweet cardigan who would not meet his eyes. The minister, Millicent Bagnold, sat to one side beneath the standard of the ministry, cautious and watchful, a woman who had clearly decided to let this resolve itself before she committed to a side. Albus Dumbledore did not go to the high bench. He walked instead to a seat among the members, slowly, in full view of them all, and the murmur that followed him was confused, because the chief warlock did not simply decline his own chair, and no one yet understood why he had. Amelia Bones stood before anyone could fill the silence. Before this body convenes, she said, and her flat, strong voice carried to the highest tier, I raise a point of law that cannot wait, and that I will not be talked past. This session was called on the petition of the chief warlock concerning his guardianship of the minor Harry Potter. The chief warlock is therefore a party to the matter before us. He cannot preside over a hearing in which he is a party. He cannot rule on evidence concerning his own conduct. I move that Albus Dumbledore recuse himself from the chair for the whole of this matter, and that an acting chief warlock be appointed who has no interest in its outcome. The law is plain. No man judges his own cause. She looked up at the empty high bench. I see he has already left the chair, which tells this body something. Let us make it formal, and let no one ever say this hearing was held in his pocket. The murmur swelled. Tiberius Ogden rose, and the room quieted for him, and he said in a dry old voice, Madam Bones is correct, and any first-year apprentice at law could tell you so, and the fact that it needed saying aloud in the highest court in Britain is a small disgrace we may examine another day. I have no house in this quarrel and no love lost in any direction. If the body will have me, I will hold the chair, and I will hold it straight. There was a show of wands raised in assent, ragged at first and then broad, and Ogden climbed to the high bench, and Albus Dumbledore sat among the members like an ordinary man, and Harry watched the single most important thing he had come to do accomplish itself in under 2 minutes, because he had spent a meeting with an honest woman making sure it would. Now, said Ogden, settling, the petition before us asks 2 things: that this body ratify the guardianship of Albus Dumbledore over the boy, and order the boy returned to him. Before we vote any man a guardianship, I should think we ought to see what the guardianship rests on. Does any member wish to be heard? Lucius Malfoy rose like a man uncoiling. I wish to be heard, he said, and his silk voice filled the amphitheater. I am Lucius Malfoy of the ancient and noble house of Malfoy, and I rise not in accusation but in concern, grave concern, for the oldest principle of our kind. We are asked today to place beyond question the guardianship of a child of the old blood. Very well, but I have made inquiry, as is any peer's right where a noble house is touched, and I have learned a thing that troubles me to my marrow. This guardianship, the very authority we are asked to bless, has never once been examined. It rests upon a file lodged 7 years ago under emergency powers, sealed at the time of its lodging and sealed still, by the hand of the very man it benefits. He let the horror of it land, savoring it, exactly as Harry had known he would. We are asked to ratify a document no member of this body has ever read. I say we shall not bless what we have not seen. I move that the sealed guardianship file of Harry Potter be brought before this court and read aloud, in full, that we may know what we are being asked to make eternal. If it is sound, the chief warlock loses nothing. If it is not, the gray eyes glittered, then we have been saved from a grave error, and a child has been saved from worse. It carried. Of course it carried. The ancient houses loved nothing better than the spectacle of a sealed thing forced open, and the neutrals could not be seen voting to ratify a document unread, and Bones added the weight of the law to it. And within minutes Tiberius Ogden had ordered the ministry's sealed copy brought up from the vaults of the Department of Mysteries, and a court scribe broke the chief warlock's wax under the eyes of the whole assembly. It was then that Dumbledore's defenders made their move, and it was the move Harry had been waiting for since Scarrock first explained the shape of the trap. A stooped old wizard with a wispy beard and a quavering, indignant voice rose from among the loyalists, Elphia's doge. Harry would learn, Dumbledore's oldest friend, and cried, "This is monstrous. Before we tear open a man's sealed papers on the word of a Malfoy and a child paraded by goblins. I would remind this body that whatever the goblins claim to have found, the goblins cannot testify. It is the oldest principle of our law. A goblin has no standing to give evidence against a wizard, none. And so this entire so-called audit, this dossier they have carried in here in their iron box, is so much smoke. The boy is a ward, a minor, with no legal standing to bring any complaint whatever, and the creatures behind him have no standing to speak at all. There is no case here. There are only goblins overreaching their station and using a confused child as their mouth. And there it was, the whole counterattack in one breath. The boy has no standing, the goblins cannot testify, the evidence is inadmissible, the case is nothing. It was true in the ordinary law. It was exactly what Gornuk had warned would come, and it was exactly what they had prepared the answer to. Harry stepped forward into the hard light and spoke for the first time, and his clear, cold child's voice cut through the old man's quavering and silenced the room more completely than any shout could have. "Mr. Doge is right about the ordinary law," Harry said. "A goblin can't testify against a wizard. A ward can't bring a complaint. If this were an ordinary matter, he'd be right and you could all go home." He let that sit and saw the surprise of it ripple through the tears, the accuser conceding the point. "But this isn't an ordinary matter, and the law that governs it isn't the ordinary law. It's the Accord of Iron. The treaty between the wizards and the goblins, 800 years old, signed by this body's own ancestors, and the Accord says something the ordinary law doesn't." He turned, and Gornuk stepped forward and laid open a great parchment, the treaty itself certified, the relevant clause marked in gold. "Read it," Harry said. Gornuk read in his flat, carrying voice. "Where the wrong complained of is a wrong against the bank itself, a breach of a vault, a theft from the hoard's keeping, the bank shall have standing to bring the matter before the wizard court, and the bank's own certified reconciliation shall be received as true evidence therein, the bank being in such a matter not a witness against a wizard but the injured party in its own right." He looked up. "The Accord of Iron, clause the 9th. Signed by the Wisengamot of the day and never repealed and binding upon this body as upon mine." "This isn't a goblin testifying against a wizard," Harry said into the dead silence. "This is the bank, the injured party, bringing a complaint that its vault was robbed, which the treaty says it has every right to do, and presenting its certified audit, which the treaty says you have to receive. And I'm not a ward bringing a complaint. I'm the heir of an ancient and noble house, exercising my right of audience, which no member of this body has ever been denied of any age since this court was founded." He looked up at the tears. "Mr. Doge wanted you to think there was no case because of who was bringing it, but the treaty he forgot about is the exact treaty that gives the bank standing, makes the audit evidence, and puts it in front of you whether the chief warlock likes it or not. The case was always going to be heard. It just took 11 days and an 8-year-old to find the clause that made you hear it." A pause. "Open the file." Tiberius Ogden looked at the marked clause for a long moment and at the certified treaty, and then he said dryly, "The boy, the heir, has the law of it. The Accord governs, and the Accord is plain. The audit will be received, and the bank has standing, and the heir of the House of Potter has the floor whenever he chooses to take it. Mr. Doge, sit down." Scribe read the guardianship file. And the scribe read it, and the room learned what Harry had learned 11 days before. That the grant of guardianship was no grant at all, but a self-certification signed by Albus Dumbledore, witnessed by Albus Dumbledore's authority, lodged under emergency powers held by Albus Dumbledore, and sealed by the order of Albus Dumbledore, never ratified, never reviewed, never seen by another living soul, a man's appointment of himself, locked in a box he alone could open, relied upon for 7 years because no one had ever been permitted to look. The reading took 4 minutes. By the end of it, the amphitheater had gone very quiet, the quiet of a great many people recalculating at once, and then they read the will. Harry stood very straight as the scribe read his parents' voices into the silent court, the Godfather named, the Longbottoms named, Andromeda Tonks named, and the plain forbidding words, "Under no circumstances whatsoever is Harry to be given into the keeping of Lily's sister," and he watched the room hear that the boy had been placed in the one home his murdered parents had expressly forbidden, by the man who had sealed their will so that no one would know they had forbidden it. He did not let his face change. He had felt this one already in a stone room under London, and he had only the one feeling to spend, and he had spent it. What was left was to let the room have its turn. It was Amelia Bones who rose into the aftermath, and her voice was iron. "And the gold," she said. "Let us not lose the gold in the grief, for the gold is the part that cannot be argued. 67,000 galleons removed from this child's trust over 7 years, reconciled to the coin by the bank's certified audit, which under the Accord we are bound to receive as true." She held up the dossier. 4 streams, 6,000 for the keep of a boy who lived in a cupboard, 1,500 to a paid watcher, 7,000 in rents diverted at the door of a vault the thief could not open. And 51,800 galleons run through 3 hidden vaults into a charity administered solely and secretly by Albus Dumbledore. She set the dossier down. I have spent my life prosecuting theft. I have never seen a cleaner one, nor a colder, nor one done to a smaller victim by a greater man. Albus Dumbledore rose. The room turned to him, and even now, even after the file, even after the will, there was a leaning toward him, a held breath of hope, because he was Albus Dumbledore, and surely, surely there was an answer. He stood among the members, an old man with a long white beard, and he did not deny one figure, and that, too, was masterful. Every galleon Madame Bones has named I took, he said quietly, and the admission sent a shock through the tears. I will not insult this body by contesting an audit I know to be accurate. I took it, and I spent it, every coin, not upon myself, as the books will show, but upon the defense of this world against an enemy I have reason to believe is not gone, and will return, and will come first and hardest for the very child whose gold I spent to prepare against him. I make no excuse for the manner of it. I make only this offer freely before you all. I will restore the whole of it, 67,000 galleons from my own fortune this day, with interest the bank itself may set, and I will submit to whatever censure this body judges fit. I ask only that we weigh against my undoubted faults the 30 years I have given to the safety of every soul in this room, and that we not in our outrage over gold tear down the watch I have kept, on the eve of a storm only I have seen coming. He spread his hands, and his blue eyes swept the room, and Harry watched 100 members begin, despite everything, to be moved. Judge me, but do not, I beg you, mistake a guardian's terrible choices for a thief's greed. Everything I did for the boy and for you. It was working. Harry could feel it working, could see the leaning come back, the great gravity of the man bending the room toward forgiveness even now, and so he reached into the iron case and drew out the one page he had kept folded against this exact moment, the single fact Scarrock had found on the 6th day and the two of them had agreed to save, and he stepped into the light. One question, Harry said, then you can vote however you want. The room stilled. The disbursements were made under Ad 1, Harry said, and Ad 1 says in his own writing that every coin drawn under it was drawn for the ward's benefit and welfare. That's the legal words, that's what he signed every time 14 times, for the ward's benefit and welfare. He unfolded the page. The largest single disbursement was 8,000 galleons. The bank has the exact date. I'd like the date read, and then I'd like to tell you what my benefit and welfare looked like that week, because I was there. He held the page up to Tiberius Ogden. Read the date, sir, please. Ogden read it. A date in the winter Harry had been 7 years old. That week, Harry said, and his clear, cold voice did not waver and did not rise, and the whole amphitheater hung on it. I was kept home from school because I had been knocked down a flight of stairs and they didn't want a teacher asking about the bruises. I did nothing hot to eat in 4 days. I was wearing my cousin's old coat, which didn't close, in January, because my own had been taken to make room in the cupboard. I weighed less at 7 than my cousin had at 5. And on the day a teacher finally wrote a note about how thin I was, I have learned the note exists. It is in a Muggle file. Madame Bones can send for it. On that exact day, 8,000 galleons left my trust, signed by my guardian for my benefit and welfare. He let the page fall to his side. I'm not asking you to decide whether he meant well. I'm sure he did. He's the most sure man I've ever met. I'm asking you to look at his own words for the ward's benefit and welfare, and at what my benefit and welfare actually was that week, that month, that whole 7 years, and tell me whether words and truth have ever in the history of this court stood further apart. He didn't take my money from me. He took it for his cause and wrote my name on the taking so it would be legal. That's not a guardian. The treaty has a word for it, and so do you. The silence that followed was the deepest Harry had ever stood in, and then it broke not into uproar but into the low, terrible sound of a great many people who had loved a man their whole lives turning all at once to face what he had done. The leaning was gone. Harry watched it go. He had not outshouted the legend. He had outcounted it with one date and one true week, and the numbers, as Scarrock had promised, did not care how sure the great man was. Tiberius Ogden let the silence hold until it had done its work, and then he spoke, and his dry old voice was heavy as stone. This body will vote, he said, and it will vote on the record now before it, which is more record than this court has seen in my lifetime. On the petition to ratify the guardianship of Albus Dumbledore, I put it to you, and may you remember the file we have just heard. Wandlight rose against it, tier upon tier, a near-unanimous wall of refusal. The petition fails. The guardianship is struck. The instrument Ad 1, resting upon a guardianship this body declines to recognize, is void from its origin, and every disbursement made under it is hereby an unauthorized withdrawal, which is to say, in the plain language of the accord and of any honest tongue, a theft from a vault under goblin protection. He drew breath. The bank is awarded full restitution of 67,000 galleons, with such penalty as the accord provides, the manner to be settled between the bank and the offender. The matter of the sealed will, the matter of the conviction of Sirius Black without trial in the same week and under the same powers, and the matter of the conduct of Albus Dumbledore in the whole of this affair, are referred to the Department of Magical Law Enforcement for full and open inquiry, Madam Bones presiding, with this court's instruction that nothing be sealed. He looked down at the old man standing motionless among the members. Albus Dumbledore is suspended from the chair of Chief Warlock pending that inquiry. This court will not today say more than the evidence allows, but the evidence today has said a very great deal. He brought down the gavel, and the sound of it rang through the deep stone room like a vault door closing. Harry stood in the hard light at the bottom of the amphitheater, 8 years old, a band of black iron on his wrist and a photograph of 3 laughing people against his chest. And he did not smile, and he did not weep, and he watched the most powerful man in Britain stand alone in a sea of plum-colored robes that would not any longer meet his eyes, and the cold quiet thing in him, which had started keeping its own ledger in a stone room 11 days before. Drew a single clean line under the first column and found that, to the coin, it balanced. The reckoning had begun. It was not finished, but it had begun in the light where he had sworn it would, and there was no sealing it now. Chapter 6 and Chapter 7 reclaimed the recovery took 3 days, and Harry watched all of it because the iron on his wrist gave him the right, and because he had learned that a thing was not finished until the numbers said so. It was, in the end, the easy part. The Wisengamot had voided Ad 1 from its origin, and a void instrument is a thing that never lawfully existed, and so every galleon drawn under it had been, in the eye of the law and the colder eye of the accord, stolen from the moment it left the trust. Dumbledore had offered restitution from his own fortune, and the offer had been a good move when he made it, the gesture of a great man making amends. The court had taken him at his word and made it an order, which was a different thing entirely, because an order was not a gesture and could not be withdrawn, and the bank, once it held an order against a wizard who had committed Kruvaskin, did not collect the way a Muggle solicitor collects. It collected the way a creditor collects who has waited 800 years for a reason. Scarrock handled it personally. He sat in the long stone chamber with the ledgers open and the gold script hanging in the air, and one by one he closed the streams. 6,375 the keep, he said, and struck it through, and the gold of it flowed back into the Potter Trust in the air above the table, a column refilling. 1,530 the watcher, 7,295 the diverted rents recovered from the holdings they were stolen at. Each one flowed home. And 51,800 the dark. The old goblin paused over that one, and something almost like satisfaction crossed his ancient face. The dark air was the easiest of all to recover, once the law had voided the instrument, because we knew exactly where it had gone, the Phoenix Endowment. The charity in the false name, administered solely and secretly by Albus Dumbledore, which the instant AD 1 fell became a vault holding 51,800 galleons of stolen property, against which the bank holds a lien older than the kingdom. He drew a line, and the last and largest stream flowed back, and the Potter Trust stood whole again in the air, restored to the last coin. 67,000 galleons, returned. The first column of your ledger air balances. That's the restitution, Harry said. What's the rest? You told me the first night, when a wizard robs a vault, the bank doesn't sue, the bank answers. The treaty stopped you answering the old way, but the court gave you such penalty as the accord provides. What does the accord provide? Ragnarok answered. He had come up from the deep for this, which Gornuk said he had not done in living memory, and he stood at the head of the chamber with his bright eyes on the boy. Accord provides for the thief's price, the director said. It is the penalty for Kruvaskin that the treaty permits us to exact through the wizard law, since it forbids us to exact it through iron. It is this, that one who desecrates a vault forfeits to the bank not only what he took, but everything he built with it, not as punishment, as cleansing. What is grown from stolen gold is itself unclean, root and branch, and the hoard will not suffer it to stand. His quiet voice filled the room. Albus Dumbledore stole 51,800 galleons and grew from it a thing, a network, refuges, watchers, a secret architecture spread across the whole of Britain, the work of 7 years. Every brick of it was laid with your gold, and so by the thief's price every brick of it is forfeit to the bank, to be seized, catalogued, and disposed of as the injured party sees fit. The bright eyes did not blink. His war chest air, his whole secret kingdom of good deeds. The thing he damned himself to build, it is ours now, by the oldest law there is, and ours by the iron on your wrist, means in no small part yours. We took back your gold, and we took from him the thing he valued more than gold, more than his chair, more, I think, than his life, the work. That is the thief's price. That is what it costs to spit on the hoard. He will understand it when he is told, far better than he understood the loss of the chair. Harry sat with that for a moment. He thought about the houses in the north, the refuges, the maimed man who could not work, and the widow and the orphaned family, the real ones, the true good among the false, the people who had been helped, whatever the gold had been stolen, to do it. Some of it was real, he said, the charity. Some of the people it helped were really hurt by the war, widows, orphans, a man who lost his hands. He looked up at Ragnarok. I don't want them to lose what kept them alive because of what he did. They didn't steal anything. If I take the whole network apart to punish him, I punish them too, and they're the ones who got hurt and had it decided for them by people above their heads. I won't do to them what he did to me. The cold, quiet thing in him had turned for once to a different kind of sum. Catalog all of it, everything he built. Then the real relief, the widows, the orphans, the maimed, keeps flowing openly in my name out of the gold that's mine to give. Not his charity in a false name in the dark. Mine with my name on it where everyone can see exactly who's helping and why. The watchers and the secret architecture, the part that was about his war and his power that comes apart. But the part that was actually mercy stays mercy. I just take it out of the dark. He paused. That's the difference between us. He did good things in the dark so no one could check them. I'll do the same good things in the light and dare anyone to find the seam. Ragnak was silent for a long moment, and then he made the low rasp in his chest that Harry had learned was the nearest thing the director had to approval. You have just done a thing he never once managed in 150 years, the old goblin said. You have taken the thief's price and turned it from vengeance into accounting. The unclean work comes down. The clean work stands in the light in your name, paid honestly from your own restored gold. He inclined his iron-gray head. It will cost you. Widows and the maimed are an open expense now year upon year, where before they were a thief's secret. You choose to carry it. Why? Because I can afford it and they can't, Harry said simply. That's the whole reason anyone should ever carry anything. He had it backwards. He spent the gold of someone who couldn't refuse on a cause that couldn't say no and called it the greater good. The greater good isn't a thing you do to people. It's a thing you do with what's yours out loud where they can tell you to stop. He looked at the restored column hanging gold in the air. Write it into the trust, make it permanent. The Potter Relief open accounts audited every year, the first audit by you. If I ever start spending other people's lives for a cause, I want a goblin to catch me at it. Put that in writing too. It is the most goblin sentence a wizard has ever spoken, said Gornuk from the side, and there was in his flat voice something that was almost wonder, and I have served this bank for 200 years. That was the gold and the price and the mercy. There remained the matter of what was to be done with Harry Potter, and the world above had a great many opinions about it, and Harry had exactly one, and his was the only one that counted, because the court had stripped the guardianship and named no replacement, and a great deal of magical Britain had spent 3 days discovering, to its discomfort, that the boy who lived now answered to no one at all. They are circling, Gornuk reported on the third evening, laying a sheaf of letters on Harry's desk, the desk that had become his, in the room that had become his, in the bank that had become, against all sense, the first home he had ever chosen. Now that the guardianship is void, every faction in the country wishes to be the one to take you in. The ministry proposes a board of guardians itself, naturally the board. Lucius Malfoy has written very graciously to remind you that a child of the old blood should not be alone. 3 ancient houses have proposed to adopt you outright. Even the school has written. The deputy headmistress, a Madame McGonagall, asks to see you, and her letter, unlike the others, asks nothing for itself. He set down the last one. They have spent 11 days fighting over your gold. Now they will spend the next 11 years fighting over you. Unless you settle it here on your terms before they settle it on theirs. Harry looked at the pile of letters, the whole hungry weight of a world that had ignored him in a cupboard for 7 years, and now could not wait to claim the boy who had toppled a legend. None of them, he said. Not the ministry, not Malfoy, not the houses. Every one of them wants the symbol. They want to be the family that owns the boy who lived. He pushed the pile aside. There's one name on the list that matters, and it's not in this pile because she never wrote, because no one ever told her she could. He looked up at Gornuk. Andromeda Tonks, third named guardian in my parents' will. The one with the good heart and a daughter my age who lives an hour's owl from the cupboard and was never asked. My mother chose her. Out of everyone in the world, with all the time in the world to think about it, my mother wrote her name down for exactly this. The cold, quiet thing in him went, for a moment, very still and not cold at all. I want her asked now, properly, as she should have been asked 7 years ago. Gornuk looked at the boy for a long moment. You could have anyone in Britain, the old goblin said. Wealth, name, power, houses that would make you their heir, factions that would make you their prince, and you choose the one name no one fought over, the one your mother chose. That's exactly why, Harry said. Everyone in that pile chose me because of what I did last week. She got chosen for me before I could do anything at all, by someone who knew me when I was nobody, when I was just a baby they loved, not a weapon or a symbol or a vote. He set his hand flat on his chest, where the photograph lay, the 3 laughing people. My whole life, every single thing about me was decided by someone above my head for their reasons in the dark. This is the first choice I get to make. And I'm going to make it the same way I made everything else. He looked up and his green eyes were very clear, in the light, on purpose, by choosing the person who was chosen for me by the only 2 people who ever wanted me for myself. Send for Andromeda Tonks, tell her the truth, all of it, and tell her I'm not asking her to take in the boy who lived. A pause. Tell her I'm asking whether my mother was right about her. She'll understand what that means. While the bank made ready to receive Andromeda Tonks's answer, the thief's price was being collected across Britain, and Harry insisted on seeing one piece of it with his own eyes. He chose the house in the north, the refuge, the largest single thing the stolen gold had built, because it was the place where the two halves of the question lived side by side, the unclean architecture that had to come down and the real mercy that had to be lifted out of the dark and kept. Gornuk advised against his going. Harry went anyway, with Skerok and two of the bank's silent enforcers, because the iron on his wrist meant the recovery was partly his, and because he would not order a thing done to people without standing in the room where it was done. The house was a tall gray manor on a moor swept bare by wind, and it did not look like a war chest. It looked like what it had quietly become, which was a home for people the world had broken. There were children in the yard. There was washing on a line. There was smoke from the chimneys and the smell of bread, and Harry stood at the gate looking at it and understood, in a way the ledgers had not been able to show him, exactly what Dumbledore had meant when he said the gold had been spent on the survival of his world. Some of it had, this was the sum. The keeper met them at the door, and she was not what Harry had braced for. She was an old witch with a kind, worn face and a wand she did not reach for, and she looked at the goblins and at the boy, and she said simply, "You're the Potter child, the one in the papers. You've come to take it, then. I wondered who would come when the gold stopped last week. I knew someone would in the end." "You knew the gold was stolen," Harry said. It was not an accusation. He was only counting. "No," she said. "I knew it came in the dark from a man who said never to ask where, and I am old enough to know that gold which comes in the dark has a shadow on it somewhere. And I took it anyway, because there were children in the cold, and the alternative to dirty gold was no gold and dead children, and I made my peace with that long ago." Her tired eyes did not flinch. "If it was stolen from you, and you've a right to it, and I'll not stop you. I couldn't if I tried. But I'll ask you one thing before you turn them out, because someone has to ask it, and it had better be to your face. There are 19 people in this house, boy, and 11 of them are children, and 4 of those have nowhere on this earth to go. What happens to them when you've taken your gold home?" It was the right question, and she had aimed it well, and Harry felt the whole shape of the trap that was not a trap, just a true thing put plainly, the same kind of true thing he had spent 11 days wielding against Dumbledore, now turned fairly on him. "Nothing happens to them," Harry said. "That's why I came in person, instead of sending the order down a chain where it might get rounded off. Listen to me, because I'm going to say it once, and then I'm going to make it true in writing where you can hold me to it." He stepped through the door into the warm bread-smelling hall, with the goblins behind him and the children's faces appearing at the top of the stairs. "The man who paid you stole the gold to do it, and he hid where it came from, and he made you take dirty gold because dirty gold in the dark was the only kind he'd give. That part ends today. The house comes off his books and his shadows come off it, but the house doesn't close, it opens. The cold, quiet thing in him had for once turned entirely to building rather than taking apart. It becomes the Potter Relief House, openly, in my name, funded from my own gold, the real, clean, audited gold the court just gave back to me, paid in the light, on the record, every galleon countable by anyone who cares to count. The 19 people stay, the 11 children stay. You stay if you'll keep it, because you kept it well in the dark, and you'll keep it better in the light. The only thing that changes is that no one ever has to make your peace again. No one in this house will eat dirty bread another day. They'll eat mine, and mine has a name on it, and the name isn't ashamed." The old keeper looked at him for a long moment, and her worn face did something it had clearly not done in years. "He never came," she said quietly. "In 4 years, the man who paid for all this never once set foot through that door. The gold came by owl, and the instructions came by owl, and I used to think, he's too great, too busy, too important to be seen at a house full of broken people, and I told myself that was right, that was how great men had to be." She wiped her eyes with the back of one hand, brusquely, ashamed of it. "Here's an 8-year-old child standing in my hall the very week he could have just sent the goblins, asking me what happens to the children. I think I have been a fool about what greatness is for a very long time." "You weren't a fool," Harry said. "You fed children, that's never foolish." He turned to Skerok. "Catalog it, all of it, fairly. The unclean accounts, the watchers, the network, anything that was about his war and not about these people, that comes apart and the price is paid to the bank. This house and everything in it that's actually mercy, you transfer to the new Potter Relief Trust, open books, your first audit." He paused. "And there's a record somewhere in this house, there always is, of every payment that came in the dark. He'll want it destroyed. His people may already be coming for it to keep their shadows off the inquiry. Find it first, don't burn it, unseal it, send it to Madame Bones, everything in the light." He was right that they would come. They came that evening, 2 quiet men in traveling cloaks with credentials that did not quite hold up, and an urgent need to collect certain papers on behalf of the administrator before there is any misunderstanding. And they found, instead of an old keeper alone on a windswept moor, 2 goblin enforcers at the door of the records room, and a small green-eyed boy sitting at the keeper's table with the ledgers already open in front of him. "You're late," Harry told them pleasantly. "The papers you want are already on their way to the Department of Magical Law Enforcement, with a goblin seal on the box so they can't be touched, and copies behind that and copies behind those. There's nothing here to collect. There's nothing anywhere to collect anymore. That's rather the whole point of doing things in the light. There's no single dark room left to come and empty. He let them stand in the doorway and understand it. You can go back and tell whoever sent you that the era of papers being collected quietly in the night is over. It ended in a goblin vault 11 days ago. You just hadn't heard yet. A pause. Mind the more on the way back. It's a long, cold walk to the apparition point, and there's no dirty gold out here anymore to keep anyone warm. They went. There was nothing else for them to do. And Harry sat a while longer at the keeper's table with the bread smell and the children's voices on the stairs, looking at the ledgers of a kindness that had been done in the dark and was about to be done in the light instead, and the cold, quiet thing in him drew a line under one more column and found that this one, against all his expectation, balanced in his favor and the children's both. It was the first time he understood that counting could build a thing and not only tear one down. He thought he would remember the bread smell longer than he remembered the courtroom. He turned out to be right. The matter of the Dursleys settled itself in a single sentence, which was more attention than Harry had decided to give it. The 75 galleons a month had stopped the day the court voided Ad 1, and number 4 Privet Drive had woken to discover that the inconvenient nephew was not merely gone, but had taken with him an income they had come, over 7 years, to regard as theirs by right. Amelia Bones sent for the Muggle file Harry had named in open court, the teacher's note, the school's records, the thin boy in the coat that would not close, and added it to her inquiry. And a quiet word reached Vernon Dursley through channels he did not understand and could not fight, to the effect that certain authorities, of a kind he could not refuse and had been raised not to believe in, would be taking a continued interest in the welfare of any child who had ever lived under his roof. Harry was asked once whether he wished to pursue the Dursleys further, whether he wanted them to answer, as the great man was answering for the cupboard and the cold and the stairs. No, he said, and that was all, and he meant it. They were paid to be small, and they were small. He paid them. He's the one who decided what I was worth and bought people to keep me there. Spend the inquiry on him. The Dursleys aren't a crime. They're just what he bought with my money. I'm done with them. And he was, and he never spoke of them again, and the absence of them from his thoughts was the only revenge he wanted, and the most complete one available, because the worst thing that can happen to a small cruelty is to stop being thought about by the person it was aimed at. Albus Dumbledore came one last time on the 4th day, and the bank let him in because Harry said to. They met in the same upper chamber where Harry had faced the Toad Woman, and the old man came alone, and he was not, this time, surrounded by the room's bending attention, because there was no room to bend, only a boy at a marble table and a band of black iron, and the truth between them with nothing left to seal it behind. Dumbledore looked older than he had in the atrium. The suspension from the chair had aged him. The inquiry would age him further, but it was not the offices Harry saw that had bowed the long back, it was the thief's price. Ragnarok had been right. He had been told by now what had become of the work, the refuges catalogued, the watchers dismissed, the secret architecture of 7 years coming quietly down, and the true mercy lifted out of his dark hands and set openly in a child's. I came to say, Dumbledore began and stopped, and for the first time in Harry's brief knowledge of him seemed to have arrived somewhere without a prepared word waiting. I am not certain why I came. To explain, I think. I have always been able to explain. I find this time that the explanation does not hold. I have turned it over for 4 days and it does not hold, and I am 80 years too old to be learning from a child that a thing I was certain of does not hold. You came to find out if you were forgiven, Harry said. You're not going to be, but not the way you think. He looked up at the old man and his voice was level and not unkind, which was worse than unkind. I don't hate you. Hating you would mean I'm still letting you decide how I feel, and I'm done letting you decide things about me. I just don't forgive you, because forgiving you is something you'd take and use. You'd fold it up and put it away and tell yourself, see, the boy understood in the end. It came right. I was right all along. And it didn't come right. You don't get the ending where you were right all along. That's the price. Not the gold, not the chair, not even the work. The price is that you have to live the rest of your life knowing it didn't hold and never getting to hear anyone tell you it did. The old man was quiet for a long moment. You said a thing to me before the hearing, Harry went on. You said there's a difference between being right and being good, and that the seal a man sets in the dark is the exact measure of the distance between them. You were teaching me. You meant it as a lesson for the storm you keep promising is coming. He stood, which made him the smaller of the two and somehow not. I learned it. Here's what I learned. You spent 7 years sure you were right about the war, about me, about the gold, about all of it, and maybe you were about some of it. Maybe the storm is real. Maybe he does come back. I don't know, and neither do you, not really. You just decided. But every single time you were sure, you reached for the wax, the will, the guardianship, the charity, and the false name, the gold through 3 hidden vaults. You sealed every right thing you ever did to me, because somewhere underneath all that certainty you knew the distance between right and good was a mile wide and getting wider, and you couldn't stand to look at it, so you put it in a box. He picked up nothing because he carried only the one thing, the photograph, against his chest, and that he would never set down. I'm never going to seal anything. That's what I decided down in the dark, listening to your numbers. Everything I do my whole life, I'm going to do in the light, audited out loud, where anyone can check me, because the day I start needing the dark is the day I've become you, certain and sealed and so very sorry, and I would rather be wrong in the open than right in a box. You taught me that. It's the only thing you ever gave me that was mine to keep. Thank you for it. Now please go. You're not my guardian, you're not my headmaster yet, and you're not anymore the most powerful man in Britain. You're just a man who got counted. Goodbye, Mr. Dumbledore. And Albus Dumbledore looked at the boy for a long, long time, and then he inclined his head, the grave recognition, the player's acknowledgement across the ruined board, and he turned, an old man with a long white beard and 100 regrets he would never be allowed to call vindicated, and he walked out of the chamber and out of the bank and into a daylight that no longer rearranged itself around him, and Harry watched him go without triumph and without pity. With only the flat, clean attention of a ledger drawing its final line, and that was the last time the two of them ever spoke as adversaries, though it was very far from the last Harry would hear of him. There was, before the warmth came, one more thread of the dark to pull, and Amelia Bones pulled it, and she came to tell him herself. The inquiry has requested the case file of Sirius Black, she said, standing square in the doorway as she had stood in the receiving chamber a week before, her jaw set. Convicted without trial in the same week, under the same powers that sealed your parents' will and certified your guardianship. I told you I do not believe in coincidence stacked that neatly, and I do not, and now I have the authority to do something about it. I make no promises. The man may yet be guilty. I have learned not to decide before the evidence, but he will be tried ere Potter. 7 years late in the open with everything unsealed, because this court instructed that nothing in this whole affair remain sealed, and his conviction is part of this affair now, whether anyone above wishes it or not. Something in the grim face eased, very slightly. Your mother named him first guardian. If he is what she thought he was and not what they decided he was without a trial, then there is a man in Azkaban who has spent 7 years there for a crime no court ever proved, and who would, I think, want very much to meet the boy his friends died for. I cannot give you that today, but I can promise you the truth of it in the light, and that is more than this country has managed in a long time, and it is your doing. She nodded once, the salute of one honest worker to another. You pointed the law at a crime, and it followed. Mind, as I told you, that you stay pointed the right way. I will be watching. I rather hope I never have to be anything but glad of what I see. And then on the 5th day Andromeda Tonks came. She came alone, and she came quietly, and she did not write ahead with terms or arrive with a solicitor or a sheaf of demands, and that was the first thing Harry noticed, and the thing that decided most of it before she had said a word. She was a tall woman with dark hair gone early gray at the temples and a face that was handsome rather than soft, and Harry saw the black blood in the bones of it and saw, too, that she had spent a life refusing to be what that blood expected of her. And she stood in the doorway of the chamber and looked at the small boy at the marble table, and her composed face did something complicated and not at all composed. Merlin, she said softly. You have her eyes, Lily's eyes, they told me, but I'm Merlin. She did not move toward him, she had the sense not to, and Harry was grateful for it. They told me everything. The goblin who came to my house told me everything, the way no one told me anything 7 years ago when it might have, when I could have. She stopped and mastered it and started again, plainer. I didn't know. You need to hear me say it before anything else, because you have been lied to your whole life, and you deserve one person who starts with the truth. I did not know you needed a home, no one told me. I knew Lily was dead, and I knew the boy had gone somewhere safe, and I trusted, like everyone trusted, that the great man had it in hand. If I had known you were named to me, if I had known there was a cupboard, I would have come for you that first winter and torn the door off its hinges with my hands. I want you to know that I would have come. It is too late to have come, and I will carry that, but I want you to know it was never that you weren't wanted. It was only that I was never told. Harry looked at her for a long moment, and the iron on his wrist, which did not let anyone lie to him, lay quiet and cool, because she was not lying, not in one word of it. I believe you, he said. And something in the boy that had been held shut and cold and counting for 11 days, for 7 years, eased by a fraction it would take him a long time to understand, because here at last, after the audit and the oath and the hearing and the fall of the legend, was the smallest and largest thing of all. A person his mother had chosen, telling him the truth, who would have torn a door off its hinges for a boy she had never met. He did not weep. He had spent his one feeling on the photograph in the deep days ago, and he was not a boy who would learn to weep easily even now. But he let the fraction ease, and he let her see it ease, which was, for Harry Potter, the most open thing he had ever done. I'm not going to be easy, he said, because the truth was the only currency he trusted, and she had paid him in it first. I run my own estate. The goblins hold it in trust, and I direct it, and that doesn't change, not for you, not for anyone. I do everything in the light, and I check everything twice, and I don't forgive people who decide things about me over my head, and I've just spent 11 days learning exactly how good I am at making people who do that very sorry. I'm 8, and I'm not really 8, not anymore, and I'm not going to pretend to be, even for you, even to be wanted. He met her gray eyes steadily. But my mother chose you, with all the time in the world to think. She wrote down that you have a good heart and a child of your own and you wouldn't let me be alone. So here's the only question, and you should answer it as plainly as you told me the rest." He drew a breath. "Was she right about you?" Andromeda Tonks looked at the small, fierce, cold boy with his dead sister friend's green eyes and his band of black iron and his refusal to be soft. And she did not promise him the world, and she did not tell him it would be easy, and she did not, blessedly, try to mother him on the spot. She crossed the chamber and she pulled out the chair beside him at the marble table, and she sat down beside him level, not above, and she said, in the dry, plain voice of a woman who had also spent a life refusing the dark, "There is a girl at my house your age who will drive you to distraction. Her hair is a different color every day, and she breaks everything she touches, and she has never once in 8 years done a single thing she was told. You will hate her for a week, and after that you will not remember how you lived without her." She folded her hands on the table, the same posture as his, and Harry noticed, and she meant him to. "I cannot give you back the 7 years, no one can, but I have a house with no cupboards in it, and a door you may lock from the inside or leave open as you please, and a kitchen where there is always too much food, and no one has ever once been told they cost too much to feed. You may run your state from my dining table for all I care, and audit me twice if it makes you easier, and you need not call me anything you do not wish to call me, and you need never be soft a single day in your life if soft is not what you are." She looked at him steadily. "Was Lily right about me?" "I don't know, Harry. I think she usually was. There is one way to find out, and it is the same way you have done everything else, by all accounts, in the open, on purpose, and checking as you go. Come and see. If I am not what she said, you will know within a month, and you have proven you are very hard to keep a thing from. And if I am," her voice did not break quite, "then you will have a home that you chose, with your eyes open, the first free choice anyone ever let you make, which is, I think, exactly the only kind you would ever agree to live in." Harry looked at her for a long moment. "Okay," he said, "I'll come and see." And then, because the iron would not let him pretend it was less than it was, "I'd like that, I think, yes, I'd like that very much." It was perhaps not very much as declarations go. From Harry Potter it was nearly everything, and Andromeda Tonks, who was clever, knew it and did not make him say more. He went down into the deep one last time before he left the bank, because there was a debt of the only honest kind, and it had to be paid in the right place. They were waiting for him at the Hoard Heart, all of them, Ragnarok on his black stone, and Gornuk and Scarrock in the bank's high black and gold, and Bogrod, who had no formal place there and had come anyway and would not be talked out of it, exactly as he had refused to be talked out of every other place he had decided to stand beside the boy. The slow gold glow rose off the drifts of the hoard, and the great patient presence in the gold turned its attention upon Harry as it had on the first day, and this time he did not stand against it. He let it read him, the whole of him, the 11 days and the 7 years and the cold and the counting, and the one small easing a tall gray-haired woman had put in his chest an hour before, and the presence in the gold tasted all of it and was, he understood, content. "It is done," said Ragnarok. "The vault is restored, the price is paid. The desecration is answered in the light through the wizard law without the breaking of the accord, a thing my council told me could not be done, and which was done by an heir of 8 and a clause we had forgotten we owned." The bright eyes held him. "You kept your half of the iron, Harry Potter. You spent your name and your voice and your standing, and you did not flinch, and you did not lie to us, not once in the whole of it. The nation has watched you do it. The nation does not forget. You kept yours," Harry said. "You said you wouldn't be able to abandon me even when it would save you. There was a day, Doge, the inquiry, when half the court still loved him, when letting me fall would have been cheaper for you than it had ever been. You didn't. The iron held on both ends." He looked down at the black band on his wrist. "You said it would come off when it was done. Is it done?" "It is done," Ragnarok agreed, "and so it may come off if you wish it. The oath of the Iron Friend is sworn for a cause, and your cause is won." He paused. "Or it may stay. That too is allowed where both sides wish it, for the iron, once it has held a true thing through a hard thing, may become not the binding of a single cause but the bond of a longer friendship, renewed not for war but for its own sake. We have not offered that in longer than 400 years, because in longer than 400 years there has not been one we wish to offer it to." The director's quiet voice filled the cavern. "The nation has discussed it. The nation is agreed. We would have you keep the iron, Harry Potter, not as Iron Friend for a cause, but as Iron Friend to the goblins, for as long as you live, the first wizard in 4 centuries the Horde has asked to keep. You need not answer now. It is a great deal to—" "Yes," Harry said. The word went out into the cavern, and the presence in the gold rang it back, the deep note below hearing swelling up through the drifts and the heaped coin and the worked metal until the whole Horde heart hummed with it. And the band of black iron on Harry's wrist warmed once, settling, becoming permanent, not a chain, never that, but the first thing he had ever been given that he chose to keep forever, freely in the light, with his eyes open and the whole of a nation as witness. "Then it is twice made," said Ragnarok, and there was in the ancient stillness of his face something that on a creature who smiled would have been a smile. "Go up into the sun, Iron Friend. Go and find out whether your mother was right about the woman with the good heart. Run your estate from her dining table. Do your good in the light." And when you have need of us, for there will be need, the old man's storm or some other, the world being what it is, you have only to come down, and the nation will be where it has always been, counting and faithful and yours. Harry stood at the edge of the great drop one last time, with the iron warm on his wrist and the photograph of 3 laughing people against his chest, 8 years old and not really 8, in a place no one looking for him would ever think to look, and that he could now leave whenever he chose, because he had a home he had picked and a name no one could spend and a ledger at last that balanced. He thought about the boy who had fallen out of the air onto cold marble 11 days before, terrified and counting, owning 4 things in the world. He had a great many things now. But the cold, quiet thing behind his eyes, the thing that had started keeping its own ledger in a stone room under London, understood that the only one that had ever mattered was the one he had won with all the rest, the right to have it counted. To stand in the light and be reckoned fully by his own choice on his own terms, where no one could ever again decide in the dark what he was worth. He had drawn the line, the books were open, they balanced, and somewhere far above, in a world that would never again be quite so sure of its legends, the sun was up, and a girl with impossible hair was breaking something in a kitchen with too much food in it, and a home he had chosen was waiting for a boy who had at last chosen it back. Harry Potter turned from the gold and went up to meet it. Chapter 7 End.